One, a young boy stood alone against the entire royal guard, and nobody could touch him. Tremendous, terrifying power, those three crimson eyes proved his guilt. He wielded a dark, forbidden magic that everyone feared. This was Knox von Reinhart. Heir to a powerful and wealthy noble family, suddenly a fierce red-haired girl arrived. Shocked, she stood there, completely horrified by what Knox had done. She screamed, demanding to know why he betrayed them all to side with demons. Knox paused. Betrayal. To him, that word was a massive joke. In fact, he claimed they were the ones who turned their backs on him first. She yelled liar, but his blank stare spoke volumes. Game over. There was no going back, but behind this villain was just a regular guy who played games all day, easily the greatest player the virtual world had ever seen. The reason he escaped into games was simple. His real life was miserable. 2 years ago, doctors found a terminal brain disease that would end his life very soon, leaving him with a cruel countdown. Imagine knowing your days are strictly numbered. For those first few days, he was completely paralyzed. Countless painful hospital treatments brought zero results. No cure, only painkillers. Life became entirely hollow without hope. Tomorrow, simply surviving each day became pure agony. As time dragged on, the pain was not his only problem. He was already coughing up fluid that looked like tomato sauce. He refused to fill out the medical forms. If his time was almost up, he wanted to play one last game. This was his absolute favorite world where players could choose to be a genius in one trade, balanced by a severe penalty, but he had never tried picking 2 genius traits at once, the heavy cost for doing that. That double penalty felt like a cruel, personal mockery of his own fate. A forced, ticking time limit. That was exactly his real-world situation anyway. Character finished, start game. Right then, his pounding headaches grew unbearable. He felt himself slipping away, but he desperately wanted to enjoy this final moment of peace. He barely finished customizing the avatar before his actual physical clock finally stopped ticking. His time ran out. A holographic prompt flashed, saying synchronization complete. Suddenly, the white-haired boy from the beginning sat up, breathing heavily. This was Knox, but years younger. He felt completely off, remembering only passing out at his desk. Now he was suddenly trapped in this unfamiliar room, walking over to the mirror. The young boy stared in shock. This was not his face. It belonged to Knox, the villainous character he just created. Fortunately, he knew this game inside out. He remembered every single detail. Knox von Reinhart was destined to become one of the legendary 3 Dark Masters within Inner Lunatic. He was born into a notoriously brutal criminal family, the youngest of 5 talented brothers. Their bloodline produced absolute geniuses for generations, except for Knox, who possessed 0 magical talent. That shame eventually pushed him to strike a deal with demons for strength, transforming him into the kingdom's greatest threat, just as seen at the start of this. Impossible, this must be a dream. He could not actually be Knox. While panicking, a blue status screen suddenly drifted into view behind him. The basic stats looked decent enough, but his physical energy was completely drained. Was he already dying? The newly displayed traits cleared up his confusion. That familiar time limit was the exact double genius penalty he chose earlier. He never recalled the original Knox being sick. Did this mean his fate was already sealed? Just like that past version of himself living on borrowed time, then Knox spots something. There are unread messages in his system. The screen greets him, "Hello, Yuchan," or rather Knox. That name, honestly, he was almost starting to forget it entirely. It seems his memories of that old life are getting pretty foggy lately. He remembers his parents, but has no clue where they are or if they are even alive. It is as if Knox suddenly got flooded with memories from another world. On top of that, he realizes the system knows all about his former life. Long before he ever ended up here, the system notes it has been a while. That catches Knox completely off guard. The voice remarks the last 2 years were likely brutal. He went through so much, so he deserved a real shot at living again. Finally, the system welcomes him back. Up to this very moment, Knox did not think this was permanent. Does this actually mean he can never go back to his old reality? But honestly, who cares? What was even so great about that miserable past life anyway? The system drops a hint: if Knox wants answers, he has to enroll in the academy. He needs to get stronger. It is a bit too much for Knox to process. Now he has to take orders from a floating screen. It is incredibly confusing. But one thing is clear: he has been reborn as the final boss of Inner Lunatic. Sure, he is a villain, but must he actually play the part of the ultimate bad guy? This is wild, but Knox is also dealing with a strict time limit on his life. Besides, this is no longer just a game. He will not forget who he truly is. He decides to follow the main route of the villain, yet he will keep his memories. The main goal here is to survive, no matter what it takes. If he has to play the villain to make it through, then so be it. In his past life, an incurable disease gave him only 2 years to live. But in a world full of magic, can a disease really be incurable? As he goes to leave, a sharp pain flares in his wrist, his time limit acting up. The severe inflammation keeps him from even turning the door handle properly. He cannot even practice with his sword in peace, which is pretty frustrating. Stepping out, he bumps straight into a maid. She drops all her plates in sheer terror. She had no idea who was walking there, but once she sees his face, she panics. She lets out a scream so loud that the entire manor echoes with absolute dread. Even Knox gets a bit startled by the sudden noise, but he keeps his cool. She begs for her life. Honestly, he does not even know her name. Everyone here is completely terrified of him due to his infamously terrible personality. The original Knox would typically forgive her, but with a threat of brutal death next time. But that is simply not how our main character likes to treat innocent people. The terror in the servant's eyes proves Knox was a tyrant. Without causing a scene, Knox quietly announces he is heading to the training hall. Everyone is stunned. The young master has never shown any interest in swordsmanship before. To make things even more shocking, Knox orders the maid to follow him. She walks behind him, terrified she is about to be punished for dropping those plates. Yet it is pretty strange that he has not said a single word so far. In reality, Knox has only one thing on his mind right now: basic survival. He must figure out this body's weakness before his sickness takes over again. Distracted by his thoughts, he walks forward. This game has so many secrets waiting for him, with complex layers and countless play styles, but right now he has to find out if his chosen genius traits actually worked, specifically his double talent. In swordplay and combat, normally, a single genius trait guides you to the peak. On the other hand, a magic genius reaches the peak of casting devastating spells. There are countless paths, but he selected these two, standing in the training hall. Knox realizes his body is too weak to swing a wooden sword. What good is a sword genius with the stamina of a sick old man? 10 swings is his absolute limit. Honestly, he is completely screwed. Luckily, the Rain Harbor family training ground is packed with top-tier weapons. This household has raised some of the most legendary warriors in history. Even the current family head wields the terrifying, unrivaled blade of darkness. Knox might lack health, but time and resources are things he has plenty of. His father does not care about his daily schedule, seeing how he is the youngest, most useless son in the entire household. Nobody expects anything from him. Just lifting the blade makes Knox feel like he is going to die all over again. The maid brings him water and towels, shocked to see him actually putting in effort. She never expected this from her master. Knox quietly gestures for her to approach. The girl instantly trembles, terrified that some cruel punishment is headed her way. Knox feels awkward. He does not do those things. She must listen closely. He gives her a specific list of items that she needs to buy immediately. She hesitates, claiming it is too difficult, but Knox asks if she wants that punishment from earlier. Terrified, she rushes out, convinced her master has not changed at all. His rest is cut short when the family butler unexpectedly steps into the hall. It is Rodwell D. Ernark, catching him completely off guard. This is definitely not good. This guy is his father's trusted right hand, making his presence here highly unusual. Usually they both ignore Knox completely, so he demands to know the reason for his visit. Rodwell delivers a message. The head of the house expects Knox at dinner tonight. This sudden summons completely blindsides Knox, who immediately tries to find an excuse. But Rodwell mentions that the young lady of the Styliner family is visiting. His presence is mandatory, and declining the invitation would only enrage his father. With no way out of this situation, Knox has no choice but to accept. Rodwell notices his odd behavior and questions this sudden interest in swordsmanship. He has never trained before. The young master instantly turns cold and serious. He warns him, "Rodwell, you are just a butler. Do not overstep your boundaries. My actions are none of your concern." With that, Knox walks out of the training room. He leaves the butler in absolute silence, but the moment Knox shuts the door, his tough facade completely crumbles. He is anxious, but his mind quickly shifts to the guest. He definitely did not expect her to show up at the estate today. Night falls and at dinner, someone sneers. The useless idiot actually showed up. The insult is directed right at Knox, but he chooses to ignore it completely. The arrogant twins keep pushing, mocking him about some old grudge against them. Hartz and Allen do not stop their petty insults, laughing at his expense. They even bring up his interaction with the maid, calling the rumor absolutely disgusting. This obnoxious mocking is irritating, but Knox keeps his composure. Suddenly, the maids announce the arrival of the main guest, instantly capturing everyone's attention. A message goes to the patriarch. Theo has arrived for dinner, and he brought someone along. The guest is a girl with red hair who greets everyone. Her name is Talia. She is dressed elegantly. Theo introduces her. She wants her personal knights to receive training, so she will be staying in their territory for now. The boys are thrilled by her presence, but she only looks in one direction. She is staring at Knox, the destined villain. She is the heroic rival who will eventually destroy him, making him break out in a cold sweat. This girl will drive a sword through his chest. Theo is surprised to see Knox joining them for dinner, leaving our young protagonist feeling incredibly awkward. Talia has no clue how poorly Knox is treated by his family. Soon, the lavish feast begins. They taste incredibly rich delicacies, while the twins glare directly at Knox. The entire dinner, then declare it is time to decide who will enter Eldon Academy, and Theo fully agrees that a final decision must be made very soon. Everyone knows that Eldon Academy is the most crucial place in the kingdom. That is precisely why Knox must enter, especially since his system ordered him to go there. He needs answers. The patriarch stresses that only 3 candidates per noble household are permitted to attend. This strict rule prevents massive clans from gaining too much power. The Reinhart family has. The family has already used up 2 spots. The entire dining room turns dead silent when Theo declares he will uphold family tradition. Knox asks if a duel will decide. This rapid response immediately grabs the patriarch's attention. Theo announces that in 3 months the brothers will battle for the remaining spot. Right away, the twins start. They laugh, claiming he will bring shame. If selected, insisting he has 0 chance of winning, and that this duel is a waste. Knox completely stuns them by calmly replying that he expects to hear that mockery only after they actually defeat him. This sharp provocation enrages his brother. Losing to him is unthinkable. Even the thought of losing to the clan failure is deeply offensive. Knox silently decides there is no reason to stay quiet under their insults because he is not the same weak boy they once knew. This sudden display of absolute confidence catches Theo's eye, while leaving the twins completely furious. But someone else at the table is also highly intrigued. Talia smiles softly, commenting that the young master seems incredibly confident, yet that sweet smile only awakens a deep, instinctive terror in Knox. She is the very hero who executed him in his past gaming life. When dinner finally ends, Rodwell delivers his report. Theo agrees that Knox seems entirely changed. Such a sudden transformation is baffling. Theo wonders what could have triggered it, briefly suspecting dark demonic possession before quickly dismissing the absurd idea. Still, this situation is incredibly intriguing. Theo orders Rodwell to watch Knox closely, only to discover the boy is already out practicing his drills. Knox runs laps around the estate, completely shocking the maids. They wonder why he is merely jogging when a major sword duel is only a month away. Knox notices he can easily hear their whispers. Simply perplexed, a system alert suddenly interrupts him. His stamina just went up by 0.1. It is a pretty tiny increase, but absolutely crucial for his master plan. You see, his genius trait requires a solid 4 points of stamina to activate. He is pretty annoyed. He really wishes he started with that stat instead. Gasping for air because of his frail body, Knox realizes he has to move fast. He needs 1.9 more points in a month, carrying a heavy burden. His curse literally cut stamina gains in half. That brutal run yielded almost nothing. Plus, his illness trait drags down his growth too, forcing him to work 4 times harder. There is also a cap of 15 points later, but he can worry about that tomorrow. Right on cue, Lona arrives. She has the specific items he ordered yesterday. Knox is seriously impressed. He carefully inspects the delivery. He knows these specific ingredients are the key to speeding up his training. Having cleared this game 27 times, he knows exactly how to use them. Lona nervously asks what they are for, looking pretty terrified of the dangerous-looking goods. Knox agrees but tells her they are only lethal if you do not know the trick. Leaving her totally confused, Knox grabs a bottle of poison. He chugs it. The maid panics. She screams that it is poison, but Knox already knows. This specific toxin actually boosts his stamina by 50% for 10 minutes. Sure, it will kill him right after, but he is already ahead of the clock. Lona tries to run for help. Knox stops her. He is not finished yet. Next, he swallows a golem nucleus, making the maid lose her mind in pure terror. It should turn his body to stone, but get this, taking both triggers a secret synergy. Normally, players use this nucleus for defense or to bring a golem to life. But combining it with venom completely neutralizes the poison while wiping out his frailty. Just like that, his worst debuff vanishes. Still, Lona continues to freak out. She frantically asks if he is okay, only to watch the sweaty boy do something wild. Knox suddenly starts stripping off his shirt. The maid is completely bewildered. The maid turns incredibly red, blushing hard as she watches him grab another bottle. He pours the magical spring water directly onto his bare skin, nice and cold. This critical step neutralizes the dangerous petrification effect from the golem nucleus. As the two substances react on his skin, a bizarrely soothing sensation washes over him. Another hidden effect triggers, granting him a very special temporary growth blessing. This will boost his stamina development until he finally hits 5 points. Now for the final touch, he reaches for the leftover scroll on the delivery cart. Knox casually tears it in half, instantly doubling his overall stamina growth rate. The purple-eyed boy did it. He officially shattered his curse of frailty. His current stat growth is now twice as fast as any ordinary character. Quite proud of his quick thinking, he clenches his fist in victory. His silent celebration ends immediately. His crying maid suddenly tackles him to the ground. Seeing him strip and drink poison made her think he had completely lost his mind. She only starts to calm down when he calmly asks her to bring him a towel. He is about to snap, but he stops, looking at her teary face. He honestly cannot bring himself to yell at her when he feels this amazing. Knox gently assures the worried girl that he is completely fine. Yet she still wonders if they should call a doctor to look over him. Maybe the young master just needed some rest, but Knox had other plans. His maid looked on in sheer confusion until he revealed his grand plan, running. Under the blazing morning sun, Knox started pushing himself, doing lap after grueling lap. Lona trailed closely behind him with a towel, completely unaware of the eyes watching them. A figure watched them from a distance, muttering to herself in sheer disbelief. She wondered what kind of madness possessed Knox to challenge his formidable brothers. He was nowhere near physically fit enough. That critical watcher was Talia. Her maid, Emma, whispered a quick scolding, reminding her to respect their hosts. Talia shrugged off the warning, utterly indifferent to the feelings of Knox's family. She kept complaining, thoroughly annoyed that the only training he seemed to do was jogging. He showed absolutely zero interest in picking up a sword to actually practice. Word was he even rejected every top-tier sword instructor who tried to teach him. The red-haired girl was convinced he would get crushed, yet she couldn't stop thinking. Despite her maid's clear confusion, she decided to walk right up to him. Talia walked up and offered a greeting, but Knox was internally completely confused. He had no idea why she was bothering him, so he decided to act cold. He bluntly demanded to know her business, and she winced at his harsh attitude. She immediately assumed his freezing demeanor was just him being stunned by her looks. She asked if he genuinely believed he stood a chance against his brothers. She pointed out that he was only running, a fact his maid Lona silently agreed with. Talia offered to help him train, but Knox refused her flatly, without hesitation. He told her to get lost, leaving her utterly stunned by his absolute lack of manners. In the background, Lona panicked, terrified of how he was treating a lady. Talia scoffed in disbelief, completely insulted by his cold attitude, and turned away. She stormed off, leaving Knox momentarily confused by the bizarre encounter. But realizing things were spiraling, he pulled up her character stats to check her talent. Her raw stats were insane, showing stamina that easily bypassed any average man. While she was not quite on the level of the legendary 3 Supremes yet. Sitting just below them and the 4 sages meant she was capable of slaying devils. Her element was fire, which would eventually awaken into a pure white flame. That holy white fire would give her the power to incinerate any corrupt Knox. Knowing this, trying to win Talia over as a friend was not an option. Altering her destiny too much might completely derail the story he needed to follow. He simply had to survive while keeping the original narrative strictly on track. After all, getting cozy with your future executioner is just plain crazy. Seriously, who does that? A month passed, and as Talia walked down the corridor, she remembered the praise. Everyone admired her, saying her combat skills perfectly suited her noble name. But she did not feel proud, constantly overshadowed by her older sister. She tightly gripped her sword hilt, frustrated by the thought of losing to her. Talia quietly wondered if she would ever be worthy of becoming a knight. A true knight had to live simply, free of greed, and ready for self-sacrifice. They also had to master countless intricate weapon styles and martial forms. The red-haired girl sighed, thinking back to Knox's ridiculous preparation. He actually believed simple running could save him from his powerful brothers. In her mind, he stood zero chance. Soon, the day of the duel arrived. Everyone watches from the drill hall, including Selah, Theodore's wife. Theodore asks Rodwell how he thinks the match will go, but he is unsure. The announcer quickly explains the rules and starts the duel. Knox's brother immediately raises his blade to strike. When Knox's father asks for Rodwell's opinion, the steward explains his theory. Alan's years of training will easily put him in the dominant position. The father agrees, while his wife glares as Rodwell watches Theodore. Is Theodore predicting something else? Knox has certainly changed recently. But Rodwell doubts Knox can defeat Alan without a miracle. Back when Rodwell served as a knight beside Lord Leonhard, the art of the sword was governed by a simple rule. Success was measured strictly by the time spent training with your blade. The only exception to this is an overwhelming, legendary talent from beyond. A gift of overwhelming, natural talent, but Knox does not have that. Theodore speaks up, warning them not to dismiss other possibilities. Any of his sons could hold a power equal to the three supremes. Hearing this, Knox silently laments his terrible luck in this fantasy world. He thought his luck was high since it sat at 7 points. Yet after all that intense running, he still failed to raise his stamina. With his blessing of growth, he only reached 3.8 yesterday. He was so close to 4. Meanwhile, Lona kept running behind him. She panted, asking if she really needed to be running with him. He confirmed it, letting his real motive slip that he wanted her to suffer. If he has to hurt, she should too. He then reminds her of cleaning duty. She pouts instantly at the chore, which Knox notes with a smirk. He chuckles, wondering if all this running is boosting her stamina too. Checking her stats, he sees her number is higher than an average man. Talk about a brutal reality check. Knox is still weaker than a side character. Lona points out that the sun is setting, reminding him of tomorrow's big duel. Knox pants heavily, feeling deeply frustrated that his time is completely up. The next day finally arrives. Just before the match, Alan confronts his brother. He tells Knox to withdraw, calling him a total disgrace to the family. Knox laughs at his arrogance, knowing Alan just wants to thrash him. Alan openly admits it, wanting to show off and impress Talia. Knox glances up at the girl before checking his brother's stats. Knox frowns, seeing those massive stamina stats fills him with absolute dread. The announcer steps forward, warning them that the outcome cannot be contested. Talk about pressure. Losing here means Knox's entire journey is over. It would completely end his life before he can even start. He would never find the message sender or survive his 1-year limit. Gripping his sword tight, the fight begins. Alan lunges forward instantly. Knox barely rolls out of the way, grunting as he skids back. He trembles violently from the sheer power of the second attack. Knox wonders what to do as Alan laughs, relentlessly clashing blades. Suddenly, the system blares with an alert. His stamina has increased. Knox grins, whispering under his breath. Alan gets confused and mocks him before launching more furious blows at the younger boy. Theodore's wife scoffs at the sight, confident that one of her other sons will attend the academy. The duel drags on. Theodore calls it pathetic, making his wife grin. Theodore admits their expectations were too high, while Rodwell suggests stopping the match immediately for Knox's sake. Theodore hesitates, thinking about Alan. And hats, they are talented, even if they pale next to their eldest brother. Still, he wonders if none of them possess the drive to conquer everything. Down below, Knox gasps for air. Theodore sighs heavily before standing up from his chair. He intends to stop this farce. But get this, right when all hope seems lost, something inside him finally clicks 5. His hidden trait activates, flooding his body. Alan mocks him, asking if he lost it, but Knox ignores him. A new skill activates. Time begins to crawl. He remembers a wise saying about how geniuses experience time differently. And that is exactly what Knox is feeling right now. The world slows down, even if his swordplay isn't perfect yet. His dormant power has finally burst wide open, with a swift swing. The duel is decided. Alan's sword is violently knocked clean out of his hand, forcing the older brother to flinch back in shock. The steel clatters to the ground. Alan clutches his hand, glaring while Knox just stares back coldly, but he knows this isn't over yet. His active skill only lasts 5 minutes. He needs to end this fast. Looking confident, he decides to provoke them. He calls out to his brother. Mocking his slow pace, he promises to put a swift end to everything. In fact, he wants both of them to come at him at the exact same time. Knox turns to his father, asking for permission to fight both brothers simultaneously. Theodore stares in pure surprise. Talia wonders what got into him. The father hums, deeply intrigued. his curiosity is suddenly piqued by the request. He grants permission despite Seela's protests. Honestly, who isn't excited to see this unfold? The duel resumes. The twins grab their swords while Knox grins, watching. His brothers dash forward, but Knox is ready, standing his ground. Alan barks at Hats to corner him, but Hats snaps back, telling him to shut up. Knox's hidden effect activates again. He knows exactly how to block every strike, sliding past them and slamming their shoulders. Talia can only stare. Her mouth hangs wide open. Knox knows exactly what everyone is thinking right now. The family disgrace is easily dominating his two talented brothers. The twins look at each other, but Knox warns them not to look away. He steps forward, unleashing a fierce flurry that pushes them both back. Another clash begins. Under the heavy pressure of survival, Knox realizes he is actually having fun. He genuinely enjoys the thrill of a real, high-stakes sword fight. The crowd watches in absolute shock. The twins scream that this is impossible. Within seconds, both Alan and Hats are slammed hard to the ground. They look up at him, their faces twisted in utter disbelief and shock. They have lost the match. Right then, a system notification flashes before Knox. His genius effect has officially run out. Turning his gaze, Knox looks toward. Declaring the duel over, he prompted the announcer to nod in nervous agreement. The official stuttered out the verdict. Knox was the undisputed winner. Both twins cursed under their breath, their defeated bodies trembling with fury. Their arms slumped down, letting their heavy weapons slip to the ground. The swords thudded onto the stone. Theodore grinned proudly at his youngest son. Knox offered a weak, exhausted smile before bowing politely to the crowd. He offered his thanks and headed out, but Talia suddenly rushed forward. She saw this as her perfect opportunity and darted right in front of him. As the sun began to set, Knox found himself coughing and gasping for air. He was deeply shocked. Real blood was slowly spilling from his lips. And then he realized the terrible truth. He had stayed in that state way too long. Using this ultimate power for more than 5 minutes came with a massive penalty. A deadly debuff. It was literally eating away at his remaining lifespan. He just lost 2 days and 17 hours of life, leaving him even weaker. The worst possible penalty, and now he had less than a year left. A tight deadline. Luckily, the setback didn't show itself just yet. If he collapsed here, everyone would question if he was fit for school. A sudden voice called his name, and he turned to find Talia standing there. She looked deeply concerned, frantically asking if he had been hurt. Knox frowned deeply and cursed. The sudden attention sent panic through him. Why did Talia, of all people, have to butt into his business right now? If she told Theodore, everything would quickly fall apart. He tried to speak, but the worried girl cut him off. She asked how he could possibly defeat his strong brothers in such a state. This baffled him while her cheeks flushed red with guilt for doubting him. For an entire month, she had closely watched him and noticed something strange. Never, not once, had she actually seen him train with real steel. All she knew was that he swung a wooden sword around a bit on day 1. How could someone with that little training completely overpower 2 skilled fighters? She assumed he was a hidden genius, which is why she chased him out of the hall. But the sight waiting for her outside was not what she expected at all. She saw him standing alone, bleeding from his mouth and trembling from sheer exhaustion. This was no easy victory. It was something far different. Perhaps the rumors about his lazy nature were completely wrong. Knox quietly wiped the blood away as the red-haired girl stared at him in awe. To her, he looked like a passionate warrior who had suffered to earn his victory. She flinched as he let out another harsh cough, stepping slightly closer to him. She reached out to ask if he was okay, but he suddenly slapped her hand away. Knox glared with icy eyes, warning her never to touch him again. Spending 2 straight years playing video games had left him with terrible social skills. He literally had no idea how to talk to people normally. Plus, it did not help that she was destined to become his future killer. Talia fidgeted nervously, softly explaining that she only wanted to apologize to him. This baffled him as she admitted she had completely misjudged his abilities. She confessed she only expected a fragile boy, based on all the rumors. She now believed he had his own hidden reasons for focusing entirely on endurance. She apologized once again, knowing that anyone could make a simple mistake. Especially after hearing those wild rumors about his violent rampages, Knox stood there. Wondering how to even react, the girl seemed surprisingly humble and quiet. Exactly like her character in the game, which was shocking for a duke's daughter. He looked away and muttered that she could do him one favor. Just keep quiet about the bleeding she saw, she agreed without any hesitation, allowing him to walk away without another worry, but this was not the end. He would definitely see her again. As time passed, Theodore felt a creeping dread. His dark premonitions were justified. He turned to Rodwell, asking about his son. What did he think of Knox? The steward was confused by his passive behavior, but believed Knox had reached a level none of his brothers ever managed. The father shared that view, but he strongly suspected something deeper was going on. They had only witnessed a tiny fraction of the boy's actual power. He ordered Rodwell to keep watching him closely while Theodore wondered. Could Knox truly be the talent worthy of inheriting the Vanquisher power? Clenching his fist, he told Rodwell that the upcoming report was absolutely critical. Especially since Theodore did not have much time left, the steward bowed deeply and promised his best. As night fell, Knox received a sudden notification, revealing he had completed the tutorial quest, but this world no longer felt like a mere game, despite the system features still standing. His reward for winning was 3 attribute points, making him sigh heavily at the fact that he had spent a whole month grinding for just 2 points. Even so, he looked over his stats and carefully debated where to distribute them, deciding to dump them all straight into luck. Now, would you have chosen differently? In the game, luck was always the absolute most important stat to upgrade. He wanted to test it immediately. The system announced more benefits were waiting, allowing him to pull one random skill scroll and conjure a brand new skill. This got him genuinely excited. He quickly summoned the physical skill dispenser, which looked incredibly strange standing in front of him. Knox turned the dial, hoping his boosted luck would secure a decent high-grade scroll. He remembered what all the different scroll colors meant. Gulping nervously, a capsule dropped from the dispenser and cracked open, glowing with a brilliant golden light. It was a gold scroll. Thrilled, Knox unrolled it and activated his skill conjurer. He already knew exactly what skill he needed to safely steal all the hidden treasures inside the manor. This power would be absolutely indispensable. Since Theodore would soon summon all his sons, this conjuring could wait. Checking his new skill, it gave anyone with lower stats a major debuff. A 20% penalty against him. This was exactly why he loved this game. Knox glanced out the window, remembering that his older brother Green would be returning to the manor soon. He had graduated a while ago and was currently coming back from night training. For now, Knox focused entirely on resting, confident that Talia would not cause any trouble. She was a girl of her word, so she had no real reason to target him. There was simply no reason left to bother him. The next morning, Knox rose. He was quickly proven wrong as the girl walked right up to him, and he asked what she wanted. She mumbled something completely incomprehensible, leaving him confused. She repeated her question, asking if he could teach her how to progress as fast as him. Talia wanted that rapid growth, so she desperately begged him for help. She wanted him to show her his secrets. Knox just stood there, sweating bullets before walking right past her, asking if she still had not figured it out after spying on him for a whole month. Her face flushed red as she tried to deny the accusation. Running after him, she begged him to have a duel with her, or at least share his training secrets. Hearing this, the purple-eyed boy remembered that Talia desperately craved her elder sister's approval above absolutely everything else, which explained why she was projecting that onto him after his impressive display. So he turned around and decided to play a part, telling her that before asking others. She should reflect on what she actually possesses. Knox paused for a brief moment because he ran out of cool things to say, but he still told the red-haired girl to stop comparing herself to everyone else. Then, the boy. He walks away, leaving the stunned girl alone with a deep blush on her cheeks. She wonders if that is really all he had to say. Meanwhile, Knox slips out of the building, letting out a heavy sigh of relief. He checks behind him, hoping that the annoying girl is not following. He definitely does not need Talia tagging along today because he is about to track down some hidden treasure, and that hoard is inside the Lanehaba Manor, where his father and siblings await his arrival. Knox is completely stunned when he lays eyes on the massive family horse farm. It really lives up to the hype as one of the 3 best on the continent. Nearby, Rodwell bows deeply to Theodore, and the old man speaks up. The patriarch announces they have all been gathered here today so they can choose a horse as a lifelong companion. Knox gulps, realizing the big moment has finally arrived. For the Lanehaba family, horses hold an incredibly sacred place across the entire continent. Anyone hoping to become a legendary knight or wizard must first obtain a mount early on. They must forge a bond to last a lifetime. There is even an entire course dedicated to horsemanship at the academy. And cavalry warfare becomes a massive deal as things progress. Plus, having a reliable ride saves tons of travel money, indispensable. Which means picking the absolute perfect beast here is a massive make or break decision. His father speaks up, declaring that Knox gets the very first pick of the lot as the winner of the duel. With just one shot, Theodore watches closely as Knox steps forward. The patriarch hums silently, wondering if his son actually possesses the eye for this. The horses neigh, and Knox is genuinely stunned by the stellar quality of the beasts. The horses were decent enough, but he had a very specific mount in mind. His gaze swept across the stables before stopping on a scrawny, rib-bearing black and gray horse. Knox walked right over and claimed the creature without a single second of hesitation. Shocking his twin brothers, while Theodore could not help but frown, he suggested that Knox rethink his choice, surprising the young boy. Honestly, Knox expected this reaction since most people would assume he just made a completely foolish and reckless decision. But using his perceptive eye ability, he could easily see the hidden stats of this horse, instantly revealing its incredibly high grade. The tier of these beasts slowly rise in rank over time, usually 1 tier, meaning this horse would eventually become a prime-grade beast, or maybe even better when fully grown. Aside from that, this creature was an obsidian horse, easily one of the rarest breeds in the entire game due to its raw power and beauty. Knox knew Theodore would have snatched this beast instantly if he realized its true value. But right now, it just looked weak from debuffs, carrying a fatal negative trait that would kill it in just a few days. That fatal condition seemed even worse than his own illness. Still, he knew how to fix it. No problem. Theodore, however, was completely baffled by the choice. He assumed Knox saw far too much of his own weak self in the helpless animal and let his emotions take complete control. Knox's father hoped the boy would not come to regret this choice. As the older man turned and walked away, the twins and Knox stood there, sensing the massive disappointment Theodore left behind. Then Rodwell stepped forward to remind Knox that the beast still needed a name. Gently, the gray creature nuzzled Knox's hand. The light-haired boy looked down, then knelt and chose the name Carl, the exact same one he always used back in the game. It held massive meaning for him. Soon, the horse arrived at his new home, which was Knox's own bedroom. He hummed quietly, knowing he must keep his next desperate steps a total secret. Hiding the horse in his room was the absolute best option. He noticed the horse staring deeply into his eyes as if telling him it refused to die. Honestly, this moment really hit home for Knox, since they were both desperately clinging to any tiny sliver of hope. Sensing his maid Lona lurking outside, Knox called her out with a sharp threat that sent her tumbling inside. She was completely shocked he'd caught her eavesdropping, but he just shrugged it off as painfully obvious. He then told the maid that starting today, she was fully responsible for the beast. The long-haired girl pouted, turning away with a deeply annoyed expression, clearly upset because she had just freshly made his bed. Knox ignored her complaining and brushed her off, repeating that the sick creature needed extremely gentle care. Seeing Carl so weak made Lona worry, which only reminded Knox that his next step for this horse would look terrifying to any normal person. He wondered if Lona could actually handle this. Fast forward 3 days, a loud scream. Knox's room. Lona cried out that Carl was dead. Knox only sighed at the sight. He had expected this all along. Still, he felt for Lona. He knew she had actually grown incredibly attached to the poor beast. In any case, this was bound to happen. Knox knew saving Carl directly was impossible. So he told her to stop crying. It was just distracting him. The cold reaction left her totally speechless, but his next words, claiming Carl would return soon, only made her more confused. Was he losing his sanity over the loss? The young master just sighed and ordered her to step back. Then he unrolled a strange scroll on the floor and channeled his magic right into it. A brilliant light erupted and Lona watched in complete shock. Was he really using magic right now? Even though practicing it without permission was strictly illegal, the massive distraction. He almost lost his grip on the rising power. Frustrated, Knox snapped at her, asking if she really wanted to watch Carl die a second time. If that was not her plan, he demanded silence. She immediately quieted. Knox desperately needed to focus because he still could not fully control his mana, and his mana sensitivity trait was dormant. Plus, the Empire's strict laws made things even harder. Only royals could use their magic before turning 15 years old, giving them a massive head start in training. That unfair advantage usually led them to greatness. Since Knox was no royal, his only choice was to force out every single drop of magic he could summon. He felt a heavy, throbbing heat in his hands, wondering if this was real magic. Grinning as he readied his precious one-time summon. There was absolutely zero room for mistakes. He was about to cast forbidden black magic, and an image of a skeletal hand clutching a dark book flashed right before him. The system notified him that he could now raise Carl as an undead summon, asking for confirmation. He accepted instantly. An eerie, pale glow immediately wrapped around the dead horse lying right in front of the ancient book. Knox remembered how the undead worked back in the game. First, they rose through pure dark magic and shadow energy. Second, even as rotting corpses, they kept their minds, gained massive stat boosts, and swore total loyalty to their summoner. But there was one huge catch. Only the Marbus family could raise these creatures, since they were the absolute masters of darkness. They were a lot like the lion hobos, except they used dark spells instead of swords. Knox wondered if anyone outside that direct bloodline could ever learn this. The system was clear: absolutely not, unless they held the legendary Necronomicon, the fabled Book of the Dead, which was exactly what he just conjured. Pitch-black hands burst from the dirt, wrapping around Carl while a dark fluid dripped from Knox's mouth. Lona watched, frozen in absolute terror, but he told her to stay silent. He just needed a few more seconds to focus his power. He coughed up thick blood, groaning from the sheer strain. His magic pool was completely empty now, but luckily the gamble paid off. He looked up to see the horse rise back to its feet with a loud neigh. Knox did it. He stared at Carl, his brand new undead summon, noticing a strange, glowing light in its eyes. He panted, fully exhausted, but incredibly proud that he finally pulled this off. Lona, tears still streaming down her face, watched Knox pick himself up and whistle for Carl, who happily trotted over to His side, checking the gray horse's stats, he smiled seeing the negative. Debuff was completely gone, replaced by massive stat boosts. He quietly told the stallion that. From now on, he was its only master. Carl let out a soft, happy huff. As Knox gently patted its neck, but their moment was cut short when Lona suddenly threw her arms around them, crying. Knox stood there completely baffled by her tears, since she had been terrified watching him cough up blood right after the scare. With Carl, the horse just snorted, turning its head away from her in total disrespect, which was hilarious since she was the one who kept feeding it. As she began bickering with the stubborn beast, Knox focused on his next goal, finding the hidden treasure of the estate. A couple of nights later, Knox quietly slipped out of his room, sneaking past the stables toward the deep woods. Knox grabs the hidden items, relieved that the shortcut matches his memory of the game. Shoving them away, his mind quickly drifts to the next treasure deep inside the woods. If he fails to secure it, his chances of survival drop to 0. This item is his only hope to halt the fatal disease draining his life. Suddenly, a soft rustling sound makes him freeze, though he tries to brush it off. But the creeping dread won't leave him, because this isn't just a fantasy game anymore. He stops before a weathered wooden sign warning travelers to turn back immediately. It labels this place the Forest of Lost Children, where travelers wander off and die. Knox steps past the boundary, and the glowing system screen immediately flashes a warning. Clear the stage or die. A cold breeze sweeps through the dark grass. The pale-haired boy presses forward, recalling the terrible history of these woods. Entry is strictly forbidden due to the unnatural, suffocating darkness and fog. It easily blinds even the most seasoned hunters who dare enter. Once you step inside, you are basically written off as dead. But the name is literal. It is a forest for children. Adults get absolutely 0 rewards here, making any rescue attempt totally worthless. Even worse, the monsters inside grow, way more aggressive toward adults. Knox remembers learning that brutal lesson the hard way during his gaming days. For a kid, the difficulty is around 2.5 stars out of 5. Back then he ignored the loot, but now it is his only lifeline. Walking deeper into the gloom, he pulls out a wooden torch. He sparks a bright flame, the secret to surviving this maze. Watch which way the smoke blows, then walk in the exact opposite direction. He prepares to move, but decides to take care of a little annoyance first. He calls out to the stalker hiding in the bushes, getting only silence. Sighing, Knox draws his sharp blade and swings it cleanly through the leaves. A sharp scream pierces the quiet air. Now, let's see why Talia followed him. She was completely shocked that Knox remained totally unaffected by her looks. The handmaiden Emma had begged the red-haired girl to leave Knox alone. Talia ignored her entirely. Later that night, Emma paced the estate halls in panic. She knew Talia was dangerous and possessed some highly unusual magical talents. Going to check on the girl, Emma opens the door to find her room empty. Panic strikes the maid. Meanwhile, back in the dark forest, leaves rustle. Before she can raise the alarm, the dark woods grow even noisier. Talia sits on the damp ground, looking incredibly embarrassed. Knox just stares at her, completely speechless. She tries to make an excuse. But another sudden rustling makes Knox throw her behind him for protection. Out leaps a massive gray wolf, shocking Talia with its close presence. She gulps hard, terrified to face a predator so close to home. She has no weapon. The beast growls, creeping closer and closer. It unleashes a loud howl, signaling the rest of its pack nearby. Distant howls answer. The beast snarls, but Knox only smiles. He lunges forward, delivering a brutal slice right across its chest. Another quick strike to the throat drops the wolf instantly, dead. Talia can only stare in absolute shock at Knox, blood dripping from his face. Clothes, he asks her again why she is following him, making Talia blush hard. And spin a terrible lie. Knox has 0 patience and threatens to ditch her. Right there if she does not start talking. This threat completely stuns her, and she grabs his wrist, launching into a long, rambling explanation. It is not a total lie, but she is barely making sense. Knox just sighs internally, realizing she overestimates him and actually holds absolutely no ill will toward him. But he is still amazed. A girl could be clueless enough to tail someone through a dark forest at night. Still, he lets her tag along. Since he cannot exactly abandon a main character out here, he makes one thing very clear though: he is not helping her out of kindness. He only wants to avoid a family feud. Talia feels guilty and Knox hopes she learned her lesson, but she keeps babbling, trying to thank him instead. This shocks him. Suddenly, low growls shatter the quiet as wolves arrive. Predators circle them. The pair freezes in place while Knox is still holding the torch high while a cold shiver runs down Talia's spine. Suddenly, Knox shoves her aside and barks at her to stay back. He hands over the torch, explaining she will only block his sword if she tries to help. Now things are not going as planned at all, so Knox has to focus hard. This place is just the prologue zone, not the main story, so there is no final boss. No boss, that helps, but an elite beast is still guaranteed to appear. Sitting just a step below a boss, it is likely an elite gray wolf. A low growl, then they lunge. Knox knows that simply identifying his target will not make the fight any easier. He slashes at the oncoming beasts, feeling like he is balancing on a razor edge. A shadow drops, a wolf leaps from above, and he casts aside his pride and tackle this challenge head-on, just like he did in the previous world. He grips his sword, desperately searching his mind for his mantra. Once it hits him, he cleaves through the remaining beasts and sighs. Talia watches him in absolute awe, fully convinced he is barely holding back, wondering if he has done this before. His harsh words echo. She feels completely outclassed, leaving her totally humiliated. She realizes he must see her skills as totally pathetic. More howls ring out and brace yourselves, because Knox stands his ground as grass rustles in the dark. As a massive creature steps into the clearing, the elite gray wolf. Meanwhile, back at the manor, panicked servants hunt for Talia with bright torches. They spot fresh footprints heading straight into the woods, clearly belonging to Knox and Talia. Servants freeze. Pure dread washes over them as they think of the woods. Emma collapses in tears, screaming that they must follow them, but Rodwell quickly stops her, saying it is impossible, leaving her completely baffled. He explains that even the powerful Lianhaba family has never managed to conquer this place. For them, the untamed woods are a deep mark of shame, admitting that a zone inside their own estate is unexplored is basically admitting defeat. But what the Lianhaba family does not realize is that only young children who have not come of age can actually survive the woods. Rodwell wonders why Knox went in, noting how steady and calm the footprints are. With no signs of a struggle or force, it is clear Knox went. Knox stepped into the forest, clenching his fists. He couldn't deny it anymore. His old self was entirely gone. He had to tell the others the truth. There was only one way back, and Knox would have to find that path entirely on his own. Emma stood trembling. In the distance, the terrifying wolf howls began. The sound amplified her fear. She felt like she sent Talia to her death. But the red-haired girl was already pulling a sharp dagger from her ankle, ready to fight. Fear had not shattered her focus. Knox warned her to stay back. She had to save her energy and run the very second they were attacked. No time for speeches, not with a massive elite wolf looming over them. He just wanted her to stay alert. Thankfully, she was vigilant. Even so, he could not bring himself to fully trust her behind his back just yet. So Knox activated his time-slowing skill to end this in one strike. But the beast mocked him, crouching low to prepare its counterattack. Knox instantly read its play, just as the other wolves charged. He cut them down easily, but then they stopped. The elite wolf growled, sending several beasts sprinting directly at him. 4 wolves lunged at once. Trying to slash them all was completely impossible. One lunged at his blind spot, growling fiercely. Knox spun around just in time to see a dagger pierce the beast's throat. The blade came from Talia, who screamed out for him to be careful. He looked up. The red-haired girl was perched high in the branches. She knew she should run, but she simply couldn't do it. Talia called down, desperately asking if he was okay. He was stunned. She was actually helping him. But his shock was cut short by a terrifying growl. Knox spun, slicing two more wolves down while shouting that he was fine. She sighed in relief, yet he felt incredibly pathetic. He sighed deeply, then his body began to tremble. The heavy side effects of his overused skills were kicking in. Frustrating timing, especially now as something rose. The elite wolf was back. Knox just grinned, eyes flashing purple. He gripped his sword tighter as the massive beast began to circle him. Suddenly it charged, then blurred right past him into the trees. Total confusion. Silence fell heavily over the forest floor. He tried to process the move until a sudden rustle shattered the quiet. Knox turned, but he was too slow. The beast sliced deep into his side. Talia screamed his name as the wolf vanished back into the dark woods. Silence returned. Knox clutched his bleeding shoulder, gasping. He grit his teeth. Believe me, everything about this raid was going completely wrong. It was a bitter pill to swallow, considering he designed this brutal scenario himself. But real life was proving to be 100 times more brutal than any video game. Knox frantically scanned the shadows, only heavy silence. This monster was smart, coordinating attacks with its pack. It was using the thick forest cover, then leaves rustled. The beast charged like a bullet, but Knox locked onto its location. Knox swung his sword instantly, but the wolf stopped dead. Right in its tracks, denying Knox a hit. This shocked him. The beast charged again. Knox realized something. The wolf had been baiting him all along, waiting for a wild swing to expose his opening. His hands clenched the hilt as he ground his teeth, grunting as blood began to drip from his lips. Frustration boiled inside him. The wolf lunged. Time stood still. Knox saw his life flash. He had beaten this game multiple times, yet here he was, foolishly dying to his own arrogance. Knox wondered if he was really stupid. This was not the end he wanted. He closed his eyes, bracing for a second death. But it never came. A sudden scream ripped the air. He opened his eyes to see the wolf howling, a sharp dagger buried deep in its eye. He realized that if he had weak points, so did this elite predator. And the only person who could have revealed those flaws was definitely not him. Knox gripped his blade, screaming with raw fury as he plunged it deep inside the beast's gut. Blood sprayed everywhere. The giant wolf collapsed. Knox hit the dirt, completely drained by his own high-tier skills. He gasped for air while Talia screamed, knowing other beasts were alive. Yet the remaining pack whimpered and backed away. The red-haired girl leaped down from the high branches. She rushed to his side. Was he all right? Knox wiped the blood from his lips, wanting to say he owed her, but stopped because, let's be real, who thanks their future executioner? He turned away, stiffly reassuring her, though his voice was ice cold now, while his fresh wounds continued to burn. Knox slowly forced himself back onto his feet, muttering that it was nothing but a minor scratch, which let Talia breathe easier. But then she spotted a tiny spider crawling directly onto her shoulder, which immediately sent an icy chill straight down her spine, making her shriek. Knox spun around, totally confused, expecting another wave of monster attacks. Instead, the girl tackled him, clinging to his chest in absolute tears, leaving him completely baffled while Talia shivered uncontrollably. Muttering wildly about the spider to herself, she peeked at it again, screamed again, and nearly knocked Knox off his feet. Knox sighed. Knox just chuckled. Honestly, how could this deadly warrior be terrified of a tiny bug? He flicked it away, telling her to stay out of forests if she is scared. Talia asked if he felt no fear at all, but Knox countered instantly, asking if she had ever met a proud knight who was terrified of a tiny spider. trying to stutter out an excuse. Once she finally let go, Knox felt like he could finally catch his breath, but then he coughed again, which sent panic back into Talia. He snapped that it was none of her business, Knox thought, about how she had actually helped him survive, despite her annoying presence. She had literally saved his skin. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, even if he would never admit it aloud. Now, he just needed to escape since his main mission was complete. Dawn broke, but somewhere, Emma kept on crying. Rodwell stood there in absolute silence. Had everything gone horribly wrong? Talia going missing could easily spark a massive war between their families. And that was only the beginning. Far worse consequences were coming. Other children from the manor had already vanished into those dark woods. Their sheer incompetence would soon become a matter of public debate. Suddenly, Rodwell stared toward the forest. The heavy fog was starting to clear. Loud gasps echoed. The steward stood frozen with his mouth wide open. Emma rushed over to ask if the threat was finally vanquished. Rodwell slowly nodded. Their only hope was actually becoming a reality. Tears filled her eyes just as Knox and Talia emerged from the forest. The servants whispered in disbelief. Did Knox actually conquer that thing? Rodwell's mind spun. Still, one harsh truth was quickly becoming clear. The succession for family leadership was not going to be peaceful. Knox wondered why everyone was gathered, while Emma rushed to hug Talia. Tears streamed down her face as the steward explained the situation. Knox was surprised they cared so much about the family's black sheep. Then Emma suddenly grabbed Talia, lifting the girl up with a furious glare. She barked that Talia would be reciting the family's strict codes of conduct. Talia panicked and begged for forgiveness, but Emma absolutely refused to stop. The head of the Steel Liner family would deliver this lesson personally. Knox watched in utter shock. This maid was surprisingly strong. When Emma thanked him, Knox claimed he never wanted Talia following him anyway. Still, she had proven her worth and did not deserve too harsh a punishment. This made Talia blush deeply. Later, they finally returned to the manor. Back in his room, Knox began peeling off his blood-soaked clothes. That massive, welcoming crowd had surprised him, but none of that mattered. He had finally secured the legendary hidden treasure he came for. It was a unique ring that boosted his stats and had a deadly effect. The wearer could absorb a tiny fraction of an opponent's lifespan after defeating them. The stronger the fallen enemy, the more life the siphoning ring took. This was a completely unique artifact. Still, the ring alone could not save him. It was impossible to extend his life indefinitely with this simple trick. The item description specified it only absorbed tiny, limited amounts. Even so, it offered real hope. He slipped it on, knowing it was better than nothing. He felt his stats rise slightly, then called out to Lona waiting outside. The maid stepped in, nervously asking if he could see through solid things. He teased her with a simple maybe, sending her into a total panic. Worried he could see under her clothes, she squealed until Knox bonked her head. Rubbing her head, she wondered if he had suddenly gotten much stronger. Knox quickly changed the subject, challenging her to an arm wrestling match. If she won, her wage went up. If she lost, she took a pay cut. The instant they started, Knox slammed her hand down to the table. Stunned, she desperately begged him not to decrease her hard-earned wage. But Knox just grinned, bringing up some nasty insults she had whispered about him. As she pleaded, his old sickly trait suddenly flared up. It activated, his wrist fractured, and he caught a cold. Knox felt completely miserable, telling Lona to quickly fetch some ice and a towel. He tried focusing on his shiny new ring, the only good thing. Rest was crucial, but this stack of stupid ailments drove him crazy. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, a mysterious figure tried remembering his face. Knowing his name from another world, Carl and that legendary black fire ring. The two hidden treasures of Lienhaba Manor, Knox soon learned his harsh fate. Even with both items, he was officially sentenced to 6 long months of confinement, no using his new toys, Knox stared inside. Grumbling as he opened the letter, he deserved zero punishment. Why? Because he conquered the deadly forest everyone else feared. He turned directly to Lona, asking if she agreed with him. She hesitated. Knox casually warned her that her salary could easily drop significantly if she failed to keep her young master happy today. Terrified, she stammered her agreement. He flopped heavily onto the couch. This house arrest was so annoying. He was finally enjoying this new life. And watching Carl grow, this stupid confinement simply had to end. But here is the real kicker. His death was rapidly approaching, meaning he would definitely perish long before those 6 months of confinement ended. A game system screen popped up, seemingly more worried than he was. Knox stood up immediately, shaking off his dread. He told Lona his plan. He was going straight to his father to negotiate for his freedom. Lona tried to mention his freshly prepared bath, but a sudden knock interrupted her. The door opened. Rodwell bowed politely. Knox was caught completely off guard by the message that Lord Theodore wanted to see him immediately. Meanwhile, Theodore remembered a bloody scene of fallen knights and monsters. That fateful night was now famously known as the Night of Carnage. Vicious beasts swarmed him. He gripped his dark sword and sliced through every single enemy in his way. The vivid imagery of slaughter still weighed heavily on his mind, making him feel it was more like a plague than a heroic battle. Theodore stared into the distance, wrapped in dark aura. It was a reminder that he needed a worthy son to inherit his sword. The vanquisher, someone with weak, mediocre potential, simply would not do. Someone strong enough to one day defeat him. A soft knock sounded. Rodwell entered, informing him that Knox was already on his way. Theodore acknowledged this. He thought about the boy clearing the forbidden forest. An incredible feat that even he had failed to accomplish himself. Knox deserved recognition and a reward. Unsurprisingly, the Omegas interfered. They blocked any praise, refusing to believe the trash air had changed. The elders demanded a complete investigation to prove the forest was truly vanquished. Theodore had to agree to this formal inquiry, no ignoring it. Knox entered the quiet room, bowing respectfully to his powerful father. Theodore immediately brought up the boy's notorious list of past mistakes. Referring to the time before Knox reincarnated, Knox knew it well. Even so, Theodore officially acknowledged his incredible success. Theodore said Knox could name any prize he wanted, which completely shocked the young master. Cold sweat broke out on his neck since this event never happened in the game. Theodore was always incredibly cold and commanding, so Knox slowly raised his eyes to ask for absolute confirmation. His father stood up, swearing on the sacred history of their legendary black blade that he meant every word and would grant whatever Knox desired. Knox was utterly speechless. The patriarch continued, warning that any greedy or excessive demand would ruin his opinion of him, though he still held a tiny shred of faith in Knox. The boy requested some time to think, and his father readily agreed. Knox even got the green light to leave the family mansion whenever he wanted, provided he avoided causing another massive scene. The pale-haired boy quickly bowed and thanked him, while his father sternly reminded him of their family name. By morning, everyone gathered outside to bid farewell to Talia and Emma. The fiery red-haired girl blushed deeply as she offered her goodbyes, but Knox did his best to ignore her intense, beaming gaze. Suddenly, Rodwell whispered that it was only polite to reply, making the purple-eyed boy groan in pure frustration. He turned, wishing her a safe trip and suggesting they meet again once she grew into an actual, powerful knight. Talia instantly asked what she needed to do to achieve that, and Knox replied, "First get a brave heart that isn't terrified of tiny spiders." Furious and embarrassed, the girl lunged forward and punched him hard in the gut. Knox instantly regretted teasing her. He really should have said a scary wolf instead. Still, Talia agreed, warning him to keep his neck clean. For the day her sword finally finds him, that cold threat sent a massive chill down his spine. Especially knowing what the dark future actually held. Emma bowed deeply, expressing her sincere thanks for saving Talia and helping them, but Knox brushed it off, claiming he had no such intention. Go, he told them, leave without any more delays. Their carriage finally rolled away, marking the departure of a major character. Knox quietly realized he was slowly adjusting to this bizarre new life, and hey, maybe he's actually starting to enjoy it. Right on cue, a screen flashed, warning him he only had 146 days left on his clock. He sighed, no breaks from these annoying pop-ups. Days later, Lona asked if he wanted a personal maid to accompany him to the upcoming academy. Knox hummed thoughtfully, trying to remember a crucial detail when a sudden knock echoed. At the door, Rodwell stepped inside, announcing he had brought the personal maid assigned to serve the young master at school starting today. Right behind him, a green-haired girl stepped forward, introducing herself as Zitri de Laboilia. Knox offered a polite greeting, then quickly pulled up her status window. The stats confirmed his worst suspicions. She was sent by Theodore to spy on his every move. Once again, the system flashed a grim reminder about his impending doom. Knox sighed, gearing up for the challenge ahead while finding some comfort in the massive progress he had made despite all the constant setbacks. Gazing out from the balcony, Knox braced himself for his imminent journey to the academy. Lona seemed highly excited about the trip, asking if he felt nervous. He shot back with his own question, asking why she sounded so incredibly thrilled to see him go. She flinched, instantly putting on a crying show, claiming she would miss him terribly, but Knox told her to drop the fake tears immediately. He knew teasing her was a waste of precious time that could be spent training his skills. Without extra power, he would never survive the brutal curriculum ahead. After all, this was the premier academy in the Empire, and it was bound to be filled with talented students. He had to survive alongside them and weave himself right into the main storyline to become the villain he was always meant to be. Knox wondered why everything had to be this complicated, but his thoughts were soon cut off by a question about a new maid assigned to him at school. He hummed quietly before Rodwell entered to greet him and formally introduce the maid Lona had just mentioned. The green-haired girl bowed and introduced herself. Knox introduced himself too and immediately checked her stats, noticing she was actually there to spy on him for his father. Still, she maintained her kind facade. Theodore was easily one of the most powerful and cunning men in this entire universe, mostly because his deadly sword skills went way beyond mere raw talent. His absolute authority was built on pure distrust, constantly observing everything and everyone. This new maid carried Theodore's heavy expectations, and she accepted them without hesitation, a sharp, cold look in her eyes. She was actually first in line to lead the prestigious Loelia family, and in exchange for her serving him, Theodore promised to restore her to that high rank. Zitri vowed to do her best assisting Knox, but Theodore hated her choice of words. A single icy glare made her flinch. She bowed again and promised she would watch the boy and report every detail back to him. She then left, letting out a heavy sigh once free from his terrifying presence. She took a breath, pulling out a small locket from around her neck to view a family picture, knowing she could not hesitate any longer. Once night fell, Knox pondered having a spy, wondering if his father sent her to make sure he was not possessed. Honestly, that made sense since demonic possession was incredibly common in this world. After all, the original story had Knox's downfall kick off with him being possessed by a major devil. Knox believed no one would ever expose his real identity. Even so, he could not stop worrying about Zitri. She was not even a character in the main plot, which Knox felt was a waste since she was rightfully the next head of the House of Loelia, but her greedy uncle had slaughtered her parents and snatched the leadership. The rest of her story was incredibly tragic. She fled, ending up as a mere servant for the Leon Haba family. Though she put on a bright, cheerful act, she was completely despairing deep down and would soon break. If Knox remembered correctly, the poor girl would meet her tragic end. By taking her own life before the first chapter even started, he wondered what to do, but get this, saving a doomed character meant risking the entire future storyline. He knew playing hero could completely ruin his own survival plans. The next morning, Knox gathered both maids to announce he would be hunting down monsters inside the manor and needed them as his assistants. Lona froze in absolute horror and shuddered, quickly trying to fake an illness, but Zitri stepped forward and agreed without a moment of hesitation. The brown-haired girl cried, pleading with Zitri not to just agree to everything. Knox knew that sheer terror was the normal reaction, which made Zitri's calm response all the more intriguing. Knox then reminded Lona of her lack of any vacation days, shutting down her attempt to back out. He grinned and casually mentioned her wage, making the girl weep as she asked what weapon she should bring along. The boy chuckled. Zitri assured the sobbing girl she would join them after informing Rodwell. Meanwhile, Knox focused on how he desperately needed to gain more days to live, especially now that he was finally free. They rode off into the forest. Theodore watched them go from a window. A few days later, the quiet woods felt like any other forest after being conquered. Then, a low growl echoed from a gray wolf that Knox quickly charged and slashed. He was testing his ring's abilities as it stole a tiny fraction of the wolf's life force. He sighed with relief when the system notified him his remaining lifespan increased by 2 hours. Knox glanced around, realizing he had likely hunted down almost all the wolves in the forest, yet he only got those 2 hours from that grueling session. Still, he took it as a win. His thoughts were suddenly cut short by Zitri, who pointed out he had been hunting for an hour, asking if he felt tired. This immediately ruined the great mood he was just in, reminding him how slow everything was. Without his special time-slowing abilities, in reality he had only gained 1 net hour. Knox grabbed his flask and drank, wondering what to do next since he could not hunt monsters 24/7. The worst part was there was no endless supply of targets. He had already cleared out most of the forest's monster population. At this rate, his lifespan extension plan would fail completely. This was getting pretty desperate. The purple-eyed boy sighed, looking around for more prey, though Zitri warned him that speaking so casually might make ordinary people think he had lost his mind. He glanced at the setting sun, realizing they had to return to the manor. The green-haired maid asked if he wanted a bath prepared, which caught Knox off guard, but he agreed. She smiled softly, while Lona frantically asked what tasks she could help with. As well, they eventually told her to clean Knox's bedroom, leaving him quite confused. The brown-haired girl rushed off for supplies while Zitri giggled at the scene. Knox called the green-haired maid over, wanting to ask a very specific question. He asked who she actually served, shocking her completely. Knox looked at her genius assistant trait, knowing her loyalty was a double-edged sword, and he could not easily claim it yet. Zitri turned her head away with a deeply conflicted expression when Knox asked her once more, making her flinch. In hesitation, he already knew the answer she wanted to give, telling her he had no plan to press her further. At least she did not try to feed him a cheap lie. Knox made it clear he did not care who she served. He only wanted her to be his servant, using him just as he intended to use her. The boy walked away, focused entirely on their mutually beneficial contract, which was more than enough for both sides. By nightfall, they returned to the manor, and Lona was grumbling again, muttering about how cruel Knox was for taking up so much of her time. She remembered asking why she even had to tag along with them. Besides, Knox had looked like a literal demon when he told her there was no fun without her. Zitri chuckled, looking out the window while recalling the rumors about Knox's sudden change of heart, which had reached her ears. Long before she left her own family, she had assumed the stories were fake, since people rarely undergo such a massive transformation. Yet, looking at him now, it actually seemed to be true. He had already defeated his 2 brothers in a duel, earning the absolute right to represent His family name at the academy. Just watch, Knox is rapidly securing his position. Once the proud heir to her family's leadership, Zitri was now completely lost. She sighed softly, recalling his heavy words about how they would use each other. Those tense words made the green-haired girl freeze and pause her writing. She couldn't help but wonder what he truly meant by that statement. Just days later, dark rumors began spreading through the grand Lienhaba manor. Gossip claimed Zitri was kicked out of her family and no longer fit to serve. Reading the official letter, she crumpled the paper tight in her trembling fist. It accused her father, Darren Debilia, of trading away their sacred family honor. Because of her father, all of Zitri's noble privileges were gone. The light in her eyes died, her time was officially up. She knew she could no longer remain at this grand estate. After all, the mighty Lienhaba family held the highest authority here. They would never let a nameless commoner serve, not even for their outcast son. Zitri expected her dismissal any second, waiting to be replaced without a thought. Even so, Zitri forced a fake smile to greet her fellow workers. But they already knew the gossip and stared back with pure disgust. Yet Lona greeted her warmly, exactly as she had always done before. It left Zitri feeling deeply confused and incredibly awkward in that moment. When Lona suddenly grabbed her hand, Zitri wondered if this was just friendly kindness. Still, she knew being associated with an outcast would only bring trouble here. As Lona dragged Zitri away, Knox watched, knowing her time was likely up. Theodore had surely received the notice too, sealing her quiet fate. Knox knew the charges against her father were false, but he could do nothing. He couldn't foresee how this small event would ripple across their world. Birds scattered into the sky as Knox continued hunting the forest wolves. Watching him slice through beasts, Lona felt a sudden, unsettling chill. The boy seemed far more terrifying and intense than usual today. She whispered to Zitri that his usual mercy was completely gone. Zitri stared, wondering if she should be terrified of his grim state. Her eyes locked onto the blood-soaked blade he slammed into the earth. Knox cursed, his luck was utterly trash today. But here is the trick, hidden bosses only spawn under 20%. The species and exact timing, completely random. If he could just find one, his stats would explode. He sighed, ready to leave, when a sudden rush shook the trees. Something was coming, fast. Before he could even register the threat, a massive shadow flew past. No doubt about it, that was definitely the hidden boss. Spinning around, he faced an elite giant hornet, a tricky opponent. But before he could even move, a voice shattered the forest. Zitri screamed out, throwing herself directly in front of the beast. She shielded him with her own body. He could have easily blocked this, making her sacrifice totally pointless. So why did she do it? Who throws their own life away for someone else like that? Who had recently made it clear he would use them, Knox gritted his teeth and triggered his time slowing power. Back when Zitri was younger, she was a seriously clumsy kid, always falling down and hurting herself before crying. Worrying her parents, still, her mother and father would always tell her. She constantly had an open wound. It remained true even as she grew. Up when Knox asked the green-haired girl who she truly served, Zitri wondered where her loyalty actually belonged. She remembered that one horrible day when a relative murdered her parents and stole the family name. So Zitri questioned her loyalty once more, while Knox's words echoed. Her mind, suddenly she opened her eyes, finding Knox and Lona hovering over her with worry. He had already defeated the massive hornet and told the green-haired girl to stay with them. Tense, he tried to reassure her they were heading back to the mansion. Zitri thought Knox was a liar. He swore he would use her, yet he looked worried. She wondered why. Right then, her vision blurred and her eyes closed. Tears falling, she heard a tremor and faint fury in his voice. Back at the manor, Theodore was quietly reading the letter that had delivered the news. Rodwell confirmed it. Theodore only took the girl in as leverage to eventually absorb the Lelia family. The family was struggling. Losing their leader made them an easy target. It was an ideal chance for Theodore to step in. For example, he could claim their heir was in serious danger, using the family's weakness as proof. As Zitri's protector, he would have had the ultimate excuse to take over, but before that could happen, it seemed the girl had already been cast out. Theodore asked Rodwell for his opinion. The loyal steward replied that keeping a servant without a proper name would bring Knox massive disrespect at the academy. So they should dismiss her. Theodore agreed. Suddenly they were interrupted. A panicked servant burst in to report that Knox was back from his hunt. He brought back Zitri, badly injured by a monster. To save her, Knox had used an incredibly expensive antidote. This shocked Rodwell. He asked if the man meant the mandrake purifying potion, which the servant confirmed. Rodwell felt exhausted. Theodore wondered if Knox had caught feelings for his maid. Theodore knew there would be consequences for that. Lona was standing over Zitri trying to wake her. She succeeded, and Lona cried with joy to see her awake and alive. Confused, Zitri wondered what had happened and worried how Knox would react to her. Lona explained that Knox had ordered his finest antidote to be used immediately. He even threatened the doctor to force him to do it. Zitri wondered why Knox would use something so precious after his cold words. This prompted her to drag herself out of bed, asking where Knox was. Lona replied he was speaking with Rodwell, and hurried off to let him know she was awake. Quickly left alone, the sickly girl got up and walked over to her suitcase, packing her things while believing she simply did not belong here. She had nowhere to go, clutching her necklace for her family photo. She penned a quick note for Knox, writing that her pendant would finally settle her debt. She added that she would always be grateful. Zitri turned to leave. Suddenly, Knox blocked her path. He stood there, demanding to know where she was going. She winced under his freezing glare as he repeated his sharp question. Let's jump back. Before she was healed, Knox confronted the physician. He asked if a small healing potion mattered more than human life. The doctor stuttered about needing permission from Theodore or Rodwell. Knox cut him off, asking if Rodwell's word outranked his own. The guilty doctor crumbled as Knox promised to report this to his father. With the antidote finally administered, Lona anxiously asked if the young girl would survive. The doctor promised the deadly venom was completely gone. Lona let out a massive sigh of relief as Knox turned to leave. He told Lona to alert him the very second Zitri finally woke up. Knox went straight to Theodore, who was shocked by the unannounced visit. Yet the Lord seemed to already know why he was here. Activating his special trait, Knox reminded Theodore of an old favor. He demanded his wish now, to keep Zitri by his side forever. His father fell completely silent while Knox stood there, weighing his own past actions. He had tried so hard to protect the timeline and avoid any butterfly effects. He knew she was a spy controlled by his father. But none of that mattered anymore. Seriously, how could it after she risked her life? She could not explain her loyalty, but her body did. Theodore granted the wish, prompting the boy to bow deeply. But before leaving, Knox turned back to clarify his terms. The system warned that his sheer fury was breaking his calm character act. Knox ignored the warnings and pushed forward, directly addressing his father. He would never tolerate anyone messing with his people, not even his family. Leaving the room with one final, terrifying glare, Knox swept out into the hallway. Which brings us right back to the hallway, and trust me, this confrontation is intense. He asks where she is going. The green-haired girl hesitates. She admits she is leaving, feeling entirely unworthy of his kindness. Knox cuts her off, reminding her she is still his active servant. She brings up her betrayal, reminding him she was Theodore's spy. She is completely baffled as to why he keeps offering her so many second chances. Tears stream down her face as she begs to know why he keeps her. Knox simply smiles. He finally sees the real Zitri under the mask. This is the true girl, stripped of her fake and heavy disguise. She is struggling, but she has not given up on escaping the dark. Knox tells her that lies are simply a part of human nature. She still insists she wronged him, a blunt truth that Knox openly agrees with. He asks if she plans to leave without righting those wrongs. The purple-eyed boy makes it absolutely clear that she is staying with him. He does not care about her family name, only her immense talent. She will atone for everything by serving him, right by his side. Tears up yet again as she agrees to his words, promising to stand by his side for as long as it takes. Knox smiles at her dedication, and Zitri decides to address his earlier question, hoping her answer satisfies him. Knox grins back with a pleased nod, confirming that it does. By the next day, Lona is back to her gossiping, whispering about how he threatened the physician, only to be startled when she notices Knox standing there. Surprisingly, she does not even try to deny it anymore. Instead, she turns to Zitri, telling her to get some rest, and immediately dashes away to take over her chores. Knox sighs at Lona's chaotic behavior and turns back to Zitri, reminding her of his upcoming departure for the academy in 2 months. She assures him she has not forgotten and has already prepared all his essential traveling gear and basic tools. She hums, thoughtfully wondering what else she might need. Knox grins at the fact that Zitri is no longer putting on an act, which makes things much easier for him, saving him precious energy. Now he is certain these two will not betray each other even if they are pushed into a tight corner. He smiles, believing this level of trust is more than enough. Later, Zitri asks if he is doing fine, since some pretty nasty rumors have been circulating about him. Knox sits down, curious about what else people could possibly say. Since he is already used to the usual slander, he learns the new rumor is about why he kept her around, suggesting he has romantic feelings for her. The boy nearly falls out of his chair. Seriously, what is the point of role-playing as a villain like Knox? He sighs, apologizing to Zitri for the rumors, but the green-haired maid quickly clarifies that was not her intention. Instead, she is just worried the gossip might make him uncomfortable. Knox tells her there are far worse rumors out there, like him being called the youngest lion of House Haber, a boorish, scoundrelly simpleton. Zitri hesitates, wanting to say otherwise, but he warns her to lie to him if she wants to be fired. Terrified, she immediately backtracks, agreeing that is exactly what she heard. There is also something else. Apparently, he has a reputation for being rather lecherous with women. She asks if that is true, making Knox feel even worse about this character. But on the bright side, his reputation as a swordsman has actually improved. Compared to the old Knox, now the rumors describe him as a sloppy talent with an inflated ego. Still, he must stick to his role as a villain, since Knox has to stay bad to help the main heroes shine. At the end of the day, he is definitely not the hero of this story. He tells Zitri that is enough talking about rumors, as he has a task for her. She is not the only one who needs to make preparations to survive the upcoming academy life. She wonders what he needs, and Knox decides it is safe to trust her with the details because of her high loyalty. This could make her even more efficient. Knox explains that he wants to study magic before enrolling and needs her help. The green-haired maid is shocked, knowing it breaks imperial law. Knox obviously knows this and remains unfazed. But Zitri sees it as a sign of him not holding back. Either way, she trusts him completely and knows he must have a solid plan. She decides to start by searching for magic textbooks, which makes Knox. He grins, amused by how quickly she gets the hint, but a sudden commotion outside makes him look through the window, hearing rumors of his second brother, Gren, arriving, a man Knox had nearly forgotten, signaling that a major event is coming, one that could help him secure much-needed extra days of life. He quietly tells Zitri they must soon depart for somewhere distant, making her sweat as she senses another chaotic scheme Later that day, Patriarch Theodore congratulates his second son, Gren, on his recent graduation from the academy. As the family's second eldest, Gren is naturally one of Knox's brothers. Knox quickly scans Gren's stats, revealing that the guy is a snobbish, arrogant womanizer, basically sharing the same terrible reputation as Knox. Yet, he is also a shameless opportunist. Yet, his terrible character was rarely discussed. Simply because Knox was the family's biggest troublemaker, letting Gren enjoy an easier path through clever politics and underhanded schemes. Besides, during each year the academy accepts under 1,000 students, with barely half ever graduating, meaning there is absolutely no way Gren played fair. Theodore asks if his son has arranged to travel to Chaders, making Gren pause before nodding. Their father knows that the boy's primary duty involves subduing monsters. Knox remembers that Chaders is a rugged, desolate territory south of their estate, with a desert serving as a border with the eastern kingdom of Tahilan. The place is notoriously barren and crawling with monsters, where Gren has been given his first assignment to stop a massive monster wave. This is critical for him, as the reward is being recognized as an imperial knight. Gren knows about the deadly monster swarms, while Theodore explains the region prevents devastating harm to the Empire, commanding his son to defend it firmly. Gren agrees, but Knox knows this quest is about much more than hunting monsters. In the game, this side quest connects directly to several other major storylines, meaning there are massive rewards up for grabs. Knox calls out for Gren's attention, asking if he knows how much they could both gain from this. This sudden proposal shocks Gren, making him think his brother cluelessly underestimates how brutal Chaders is, but Knox smoothly breaks down his understanding, detailing the harsh rumors he has gathered since arriving. Knox knows that Gren's lie detector skill is currently active. His brother asks with a sneer if he really cleared the dangerous forest alongside Talia. Knox immediately confirms it without any shakiness or anxiety, the precise emotions Gren's passive skill detects. This secret ability is how he successfully pulls off all his underhanded schemes. Gren then questions the intense drill hall combat and the aid from Zitri, which Knox easily admits while using his Heart of Steel skill to counter the lie detection. His brother laughs, claiming he has plenty of reasons to decline because he is too busy to retrieve Knox's lifeless corpse. But suddenly, Theodore declares that Knox can join, shocking Gren. The stern patriarch insists, commanding him to take his younger brother. Gren stammers to object until their father glares him down. Gren looks at Knox, telling him to spend his remaining 3 days of life wisely, then storms off. Knox is amazed at how effortless this all was. He wonders if the patriarch is plotting something, but his thoughts are interrupted when Gren asks what he is planning and if he has completely lost his mind. Knox replies that sanity is long gone, prompting Gren to grab Knox's collar, warning him to tread carefully. He sneers that it would be a shame if he almost gets hurt before even setting off for Chaders. Suddenly, something crashes. A bottle of wine hits the floor. Knox turns to see Zitri tripping right behind him. As she stumbles, the bottle slips. Knox turns around and gets splashed head to toe. Wine completely ruins his clothes. The green-haired maid quickly bows and offers her apologies. Blaming her own clumsiness, she suggests he wait in his bedroom to change. She promises to fetch a fresh shirt, which finally forces Gren to let him go. Knox apologizes to his brother and takes his leave, walking away with a final word. He walks away 3 days until they finish catching up. This delay makes the older brother grit his teeth and squeeze his fists in rage. Walking down the hall with Zitri, the purple-eyed noble quietly thanks his maid. He thanks her for the quick escape, but Zitri just sighs. She points out how he somehow manages to attract trouble every single day. Shifting focus, she asks if he is truly set on traveling to Chaders with Gren. Knox starts to confirm his plan, but another sudden voice cuts him off. Lona runs up screaming at him, frantically asking if he has completely lost his mind. He briefly wonders if the brown-haired girl forgot who the master is around here. He sighs, telling her the decision is already set in stone. What is the big deal? Zitri actually sides with Lona. She worries for Knox's safety, knowing Chaders is way too dangerous. Despite his bold attitude, the land is crawling with monsters and bandits. Thousands of threats wait out there, but those massive numbers do not scare Knox at all. To him, it just means more targets to hunt and more lifespan to steal. He tells the worried maids he has a solid plan for dealing with those dangers. He plans to leave Lona and Zitri safe at the manor while he handles this solo. But Zitri immediately interrupts him, her tone turning surprisingly sharp and serious. No way, she has no intention of letting him go alone. She reminds him that as his personal aide, she goes wherever he goes. Her duty is to assist him, no matter where his travels take him. That means she is going to Chaders. Knox warns she could get seriously hurt. She knows the danger, but she points out he can get hurt too. They are both heading into a war zone, and she knows his secret weakness. Lona warned her that Knox is actually incredibly delicate. She pushes him further. Can a delicate, forgetful noble really survive a solo trip? He does not even know how to wash his own clothes properly. He runs his hand through his hair, and honestly, reality is hitting him hard. This is not a video game anymore. These basic survival details actually matter. If he dies out there, Zitri will be left completely defenseless at the estate. For her, sticking by his side is the only real way to survive. Knox relents. Fine, she can come, but she better not drag him down. He tells her to go get acquainted with his horse, Carl. Zitri calmly smiles. She is already way ahead of him on that front. She is on great terms with the beast, which leaves Lona completely shocked. The maid explains she won the horse over using premium sugar lumps. It cost half her monthly pay, but bribery works wonders for fast friendships. Lona gets instantly jealous because she only ever feeds the horse cheap hay. She keeps complaining. Knox shuts her up with a sharp smack, then walks away. Lona is left behind for memorial duty. Zitri is the one traveling with him. He tells the green-haired girl to pack carefully for the dangerous journey, but he cannot help. But wonder, is she worried for him? Suddenly, a loud knock echoes. Everyone freezes in sheer confusion. The heavy door slowly creaks open. It is Rodwell, announcing that Knox has been summoned to receive an item. This is shocking. Why would his cold father want to give him anything? He recalls Theodore's strange words, wondering if this is the moment, but he will know soon. Enough, facing his formidable father, Knox brings up the reason for the summons, which Theodore confirms. Secretly, the old man wonders if his son can even lift the weapon. They look at the ancient blade resting in a box. Theodore explains its history. The sword originally belonged to the family's first founder. Knox is absolutely stunned. This is totally unexpected. In all his playthroughs, he never saw this weapon. Not once, not even a tiny hint of its existence in the game. Even after 27 completed runs, he thought he knew every single secret. He was wrong. Why is Theodore offering this unknown blade to him now? He cannot read the man's mind, but this sword must be incredibly important later. Theodore speaks, interrupting his thoughts, admitting the blade looks incredibly humble. He reassures Knox that their great founder wielded this very weapon all his life. Knox asks how he can prove his worthiness, and Theodore gives a simple answer. Just hold it. Knox reaches out, gripping the hilt with both hands. The moment he lifts it, a massive, suffocating dark aura explodes from the metal. It is feeding on his mana. The color of the steel begins to warp. Theodore stands up immediately when he realizes his son can sense the energy flow. Knox nods. His father explains that the sword absorbs and multiplies the user's magic. It multiplies it several times over. This is not a weapon for the weak. Knox is shocked. He realizes this is an incredibly dangerous artifact. Before he can say anything else, the blade greedily drains another massive wave of mana. The system flashes a warning. His magical energy is dropping dangerously fast. This sudden drain threatens to shatter his poker face, making him panic internally. Theodore issues the test. To become the master, he must hold it. He must endure holding it for 10 whole minutes. Knox cannot fathom this. The weapon's name is Stormbringer. It is currently under heavy restriction. The system explains it converts mana into raw attribute points while amplifying output. This system information does not help him. He is currently struggling hard. His entire body is shaking violently from the severe negative effects. Suddenly, his magical energy hits absolute zero, with no mana left to take. The cursed sword decides to burn his actual lifespan instead as fuel. A terrifying system warning pops up. His remaining lifetime is decreasing rapidly. The boy is deeply shaken. He realizes he must drop the sword immediately. But he has a massive problem. His hands do not seem to obey. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot let go. Frustration turns to panic. Now watch, here is where the situation gets completely out of control. Despite his desperate struggle, he cannot let go. Frustration turns to sheer panic. He is completely trapped. Theodore watches. Rumor has it that the Stormbringer is a terribly wicked weapon, a cursed sword that always drives its wielders to absolute ruin in exchange for its service. Their family history stems entirely from this blade, yet no descendant ever succeeded in taming its wild power. None. Most people fainted the exact second they touched the hilt. Theodore saw it constantly. Lasting 10 minutes on a first try would be a miracle. Even Theodore himself could only endure the sword for a single hour. That took years of intense training, yet something within Theodore urged him to test this 14-year-old boy who had not even begun to unlock his magic yet. Knox had recently saved a dying servant girl, making things obvious. Every single recent disturbance pointed directly back to Knox. Talk about a massive mystery. The boy was growing, and Theodore watched his potential unfold. With the young boy shatter all expectations, Theodore watched Knox drop heavily to his knees. He gripped the blade. Perhaps his talent was actually on par with the 3 supreme leaders. That alone was more than enough reason to test him, if he survived this grueling test of endurance. For the given time, Theodore believed Knox would become their most potent leader. History of the Lion Habas. Knox pointed the blade down, cracking stone. He panted heavily. Theodore believed his young son had the absolute potential to surpass him. The boy gritted his teeth and turned toward his formidable father. Theodore admitted he had long suspected his son of hiding his power. Knox was about to ask what was happening, but his father silently walked past him. He declared the sword now belonged to Knox. Knox frowned. That sword drained his life. 3 days later, they prepared to depart. They departed for Chaders. Zitri felt content, noting how nice it was of him to give the boy a pouch. Even so, Knox remained completely miserable during the journey. His mood confused Zitri, as she expected him to be excited. Instead, he looked completely miserable. Knox sighed, wondering deeply about his own bleak future. Why should he thank his father after that sword drained his life? The blade had drained his life. Knox glanced ahead at Gren. His brother was chatting. Knox knew Gren had milked a massive fortune from their father. Gren complained about him being a burden, but Knox did not care. He would use him too. Suddenly, loud shouts broke out. They had lost the path to Chaders. Gren yelled furiously at the guide named Ron. Gren had hired Ron to guide them. Zitri looked at Knox. Knox scoffed at the foolish pathfinders and rode up to his brother. Gren tried to dismiss him with a wave, but Knox refused to back down easily. That only angered Gren. Knox asked if it did not concern him. What if he could find the right way? Gren scoffed. He could not believe his young brother actually thought he could act as a guide. Knox suggested trying his skills for a day, since homagers praised his remarkable talent in wayfinding. Gren had deep doubts but was shocked. Zitri stared at him, looking just as completely surprised by this sudden confident claim. Her shock was because Knox was lying so casually, without hesitation. Arriving late would cause serious trouble if Knox failed to deliver. Letting Knox fail his bold claim would crush his ego and satisfy Gren. Besides, a tiny delay on their journey was worth the payoff. So Gren decided to allow it, a move that instantly brought a sly grin to Knox's face. He quickly ordered everyone to move out, setting up camp before nightfall. Safe in his tent, Gren fumed. He was absolutely baffled that Knox had navigated this brutal territory so quickly. Even master scouts struggled here. Meanwhile, Knox just watched from a distance. Honestly, it was too easy for him since he remembered this map from his gaming days. He knew this fortress area by heart. But Zitri was highly curious and approached Knox directly to ask how he knew the route. Knox claimed the ground literally told him everything, leaving her completely baffled. Then she spotted the massive claw marks of a local evil bear. These monsters were native here. The terrifying news shocked the young maid and made her panic. Knox just chuckled, reassuring her they absolutely hated fire. Meanwhile, the troops whispered. They wondered if Knox would soon surpass his academy-educated brother, which drove Gren absolutely insane. In a jealous rage, Gren demanded Schultz confirm Knox's victory over the twins. Schultz confirmed it, making Gren itch to test his little brother's skills. Schultz smiled slyly. He pulled out a suspicious bag, making Gren laugh darkly as he stared at Knox. And honestly, that creepy smile means major trouble. By midnight, the camp guards were dozing off. Then the bushes rustled. But Knox was already awake, gripping his sword tightly as he stood up. He strictly ordered Zitri to stay inside the tent before stepping out. Outside, 4 massive ogres were waiting for him. This spot was supposed to be completely safe, but Knox immediately realized what lured them. The perimeter was spiked with pheromones. With their heightened senses during mating season, these beasts couldn't resist. It was clearly Gren's desperate attempt to get him killed. He wasn't scared. He casually greeted the beasts while unsheathing Stormbringer. The monsters roared and charged, but Knox blocked their initial strike easily. Leaping high into the air, he plunged his dark sword deep into the lead monster's neck. The remaining beasts swung their clubs, but he was far too fast. He dashed past, slashing them left and right. Knox smiled at his sword, realizing his fears of it draining him dry were totally pointless. With a grin, he continued the slaughter. The dark sword almost felt like it was reading his mind and moving on its own. Soon only one terrified ogre remained, dropping its club to flee. But Knox whistled for Carl. The horse morphed into its true demonic form, allowing Knox to ride up and finish the beast. Knox let out a long breath as his lifespan increased by over a full day. Suddenly, Zitri peeked out from the tent, nervously asking if he was all right. Knox reminds her of his orders, but she completely ignores his words. Instead, she stares in shock at the dead ogres, asking to summon the night patrol. Knox tells her there is no need. After all, those beasts were practically invited. That confuses her until he explains that Gren set the monsters loose on everyone. That explains why Gren pitched his tent so far away. Zitri asks if this means. Gren is trying to hold Knox back, which the young master confirms instantly. He explains that he stands directly in the way of Gren's ambition. Specifically, taking leadership of the family, so Gren wanted to test his strength. Cowardly tricks are the only way Gren could ever hope to get a real advantage over Garen, his older brother and a far superior swordsman. But Gren needs a harsh lesson showing him that cheap tricks do not work on Knox. He pulls out a small vial, asking Zitri if she knows what triggers ogres. Knox drips fresh ogre blood inside, the ultimate trigger for these beasts. They never forget a grudge, and honestly, things are about to get wild. Deep into the night, Gren is suddenly jolted awake by a strange humming crystal. It makes no sense. These crystals only react to intense monster mana. Before he can even process this, heavy thuds shake the ground. Servants burst through the tent door, screaming that they are under attack. Gren rushes outside only to see an absolute swarm of angry ogres. He can only shudder, hoping the beasts do not target him as the sun slowly rises. By morning, the camp finally beats back the beasts and begins cleanup. Gren screams at Schultz for failing him, but his servant is completely lost. But Knox is completely unfazed by all this. He asks Zitri if she agrees that this morning is absolutely beautiful. She sighs and reminds him that maids are not supposed to eat with masters. Knox shrugs it off, pointing out there are much bigger issues to worry about. Like how that massive swarm of ogres targeted Gren's tent. Zitri can only stare at him with pure disbelief and a heavy sigh. Her young master is truly something else. Knox just laughs and keeps eating. He watches the servants pack up, noting they kept Gren's blood-soaked tent. She asks what they should do about it, but Knox just plays dumb. Zitri warns him that blood will attract more monsters. That is exactly what he wants, though he keeps that detail to himself. No need to invite her endless nagging when this is the perfect opportunity. Finishing his breakfast, he realizes he needs more ogres soon. He is going to need a lot more ogres soon, and right on cue, a distant rumble echoes. He tells the green-haired girl they should catch up with the group. Deep in the forest, a lone ogre wanders until it suddenly senses danger. It looks around in confusion, then gets instantly slaughtered. On day 2 of their journey, Knox maps out the entire area. He feels relieved now that he knows the dangerous route. Gren approaches him, demanding to know how they will shake their pursuers. Knox calmly assures him that it is fully possible to lose them. They could fight all the monsters off, but even deadlier beasts will arrive, so they should escape these woods immediately. Gren completely doubts those words, deeply annoyed that soldiers are rallying behind Knox instead of him. Suddenly, another soldier steps up and asks Knox why he keeps stomping on the dirt. He did it because he knew some beasts love to burst from the soil, triggering pure panic among the ranks. Knox looks down to confirm his theory, explaining they are crossing a dangerous territory. As the ground begins to violently shake, Zitri gets startled while terrified screams echo out. Knox warns that the worm is coming as it explodes from the earth. At first glance, this beast looks like an oversized earthworm or a python, but that simple appearance hides its true nature as a deformed dragon that is completely unable to cast any kind of magic. Still, its raw strength is massive, easily wiping out dozens of fully grown ogres. Who dare to challenge it? This terrifying power was exactly why Knox had been searching for this specific monster, watching calmly as it eats their horses. None of the soldiers realized Knox was stomping to summon this beast. He turns to the group and orders them to hide in the bushes, leaving everyone baffled. Knox smiles, recalling his promise that the ogres would not be a threat. He is not wrong, even if this chaotic matchup was not his initial plan. Right on cue, hordes of angry ogres begin pouring out of the dark woods. Zitri looks absolutely terrified as she stares at the incoming legion of monsters. But Knox calmly reassures her. He asks the green-haired maid a strange question. Does she know a giant worm's favorite and least favorite creatures? She is completely lost, cowering from the loud rumbling as Knox gives the answer. The answer is ogres. As the two deadly species clash, the boy explains that while ogres are the worm's favorite prey, they are definitely not friends. A skilled adventurer must know how to turn this chaos to his own advantage. The worm shrieks, instantly crushing one of the ogres while the rest strike back. With their clubs, everyone watches in sheer disbelief as the two species try to tear each other apart. Gren grits his teeth in pure frustration. Wondering if Knox had planned all of this, Zitri asks if they should just wait it out, but Knox has other plans, watching the chaotic battle with intense purple eyes. He starts throwing rocks at the ogres, totally baffling Zitri with his moves. As the ogres fall one by one, system alerts flash in front of Knox. His stamina increases, and his total lifespan extends by 8 hours for each. Defeated monster, he obviously will not be explaining this secret to his loyal green-haired maid, but he desperately needs to boost his stats right now. Soon every single ogre is dead. Gren wonders how they can survive. The remaining giant worm, Knox, steps forward and loudly orders his soldiers to aim right for the beast's mouth. Despite some hesitation, everyone eventually obeys his command. Knox quickly activates his overpowered time-slowing ability and charges forward, watching incoming arrows and spears freeze midair around him. He leaps high, slashing the worm multiple times before spinning and landing. As time resumes, the massive worm instantly explodes in a shower of blood. This sweet victory increases his life by 10 days, far exceeding his expectations. Targeting giant monsters pays off big time, though it required those ogres. Once his stamina hits 5, his temporary trait finally unlocks. It had expired just as the fine print warned when he first activated it. A real shame, sure, but at least he made it here in the end. Knox tightens his grip while the crowd gathers around him, cheering for his incredible skills. He is just about to speak when a sudden sound interrupts him. Violent rumbles shake the earth as yet another massive worm bursts from below. A second beast is a surprise, but what happens next shocks him even more. A voice suddenly roars for everyone to get out of the way right now. The massive worm is instantly sliced clean in two by a powerful new arrival. Knox recognizes this hooded figure instantly, leaving him totally baffled by their sudden presence. What on earth is this hooded warrior doing in this place? The crowd gasps as they realize exactly who has just arrived. He is known to be the direct disciple of Celsus, the absolute genius of the blade. He is the strongest fighter in the entire universe, one of 3 supreme masters. Standing alongside Theodore, this man is named Priceless, and he immediately questions their manners. He asks if noble rules forbid them from saying thank you. Knox instantly remembers that this fierce traveler holds a deep resentment toward high society. Schultz feels insulted on behalf of Gren and steps forward in anger. He demands if Priceless knows who Gren is, but gets only a snarky reply. Introducing himself, Priceless claims he is just a mercenary. Knox recalls that this elite warrior naturally despises nobles due to his rough mercenary background. But get this, he is absolutely not supposed to be here yet. He shouldn't appear until the Academy arc officially starts later in the story. Having played this game countless times before, Knox has never seen this happen. He grits his teeth in confusion, wondering what went wrong with the timeline. Knox glances over at Priceless, silently trying to anticipate his next move. As the twilight sun falls, the group continues riding quietly through the vast, empty terrain. Gren strikes up a friendly conversation, asking if the mercenary shares their destination. Priceless nods, explaining that he is traveling there to hunt down monsters. This gets Knox thinking, recalling that Priceless always roams the Empire for self-draining. He routinely explores different territories to strengthen his skills before school starts. Knox realizes his current territory might just be randomly selected for each run. Gren observes that Priceless travels entirely alone, showing off his immense confidence. Recognizing this raw talent, Gren immediately decides to extend an appealing offer. He promises extremely high pay, asking if Priceless wants to join them. He invites him to join his squad and fight the monster wave. Priceless looks over at Gren, raising a skeptical eyebrow in response. He hums quietly before murmuring that the offer is actually quite tempting. Working for the prestigious Lion Haba family certainly has its perks. Knox watches silently. Schultz tries to snap back in anger, but Gren quickly cuts him off. He raises a hand to silence Schultz and tells Priceless to consider the offer. Gren saw how easily this mercenary slaughtered that massive worm with one single strike. He desperately needs this powerhouse to win back the respect of his own soldiers. Knox had completely stolen their trust, and this is Gren's only way out. Knox soon signals the team that they have finally reached their destination. Seeing the desolate wasteland in person is far more chilling than any game screen. Inside the game world, they pass through the gates, and Gren immediately clicks his tongue. The streets are crawling with scurrying rats, but a frail young girl quickly catches his attention. She begs weakly for some food, but Gren only stares down with pure disgust. He jerks his horse away, making the poor little girl flinch in absolute terror. Knox quickly looks away as well, causing her face to fall in deep disappointment. Seeing this, Paracelsus glances at her and clicks his tongue in sheer irritation. Suddenly, a strange man blocks their path and politely introduces himself as Tyan. He welcomes the group, explaining that he serves as the chief of the local town guard. Tyan already knows about Gren's post-graduation mission and the support Knox is supposed to provide. While the chief speaks with the young nobles, Paracelsus feels deeply let down. The mercenary realizes he expected far too much from these so-called sons of the supreme family. He honestly thought they would be different since they were hand-picked to represent their house. Sure, he saw Knox fight that massive sandworm earlier. The kid actually had some decent sword skills, but Paracelsus still has deep doubts. To him, these highborn nobles are still nothing but coddled babies through and through. He looks around the messy streets with nothing but deep disappointment. The chaotic town stands absolutely zero chance against an incoming monster wave. Paracelsus honestly wonders if the survivors are actually the unlucky ones here. Since the sun is setting fast, they decide to split up their duties tomorrow. For now, Tyan leads the tired travelers toward a nearby inn. They dismount their horses, ready to finally settle in for the night. But Gren is still thinking about the business proposal Paracelsus brought up earlier. He gets excited, but Paracelsus suddenly rejects his offer without hesitation. Gren's face immediately twists in utter confusion as he questions him. He asks if the sellsword really plans to face this wave completely alone. Knox silently watches the tense standoff from a safe distance as things heat up. Paracelsus calmly explains that he intends to stick to his original defensive plans anyway. Still, he wishes Gren the best of luck in his upcoming battle. Gren sneers and calls him a commoner, but the mercenary just laughs. As a former wanderer, he has heard much worse insults in his life. He politely wishes Gren luck once again, leaving Knox to wonder. It makes you wonder if their paths will ever cross again in this world. Once night falls, Knox tells Zitri to sleep well before the busy day ahead. He heads up to his bedroom, but a sudden movement outside catches his eye. The starving little girl is sitting, huddled near a small fire with other kids. She jumps in surprise when Knox approaches and asks if they are hungry. The children stare in shock as Knox pulls out a sack stuffed with bread. He hands the warm loaves out, and the little girl begins to cry. Tears of pure joy stream down her face as Knox realizes his limitations. He is just acting on the fading goodwill of his past life. Even so, the children are ecstatic as they happily devour the fresh bread. It is a small comfort, but Knox hates seeing kids beg for survival. Besides, they still have to figure out how to survive in this place. Watching silently from the shadows, Zitri smiles as she observes his kindness. She is glad to see that beneath his cold exterior, a warm heart remains. Cold demeanor aside, the next day Tigan explains a massive problem to the group. Every single year, the southern region of Chaders suffered from relentless monster surges. To survive these constant attacks, the helpless town had to beg the king for financial aid. He relied heavily on royal subsidies. Walking along the perimeter, Gren speaks up. He asks if a simple wooden wall is really their only line of defense, and Tyan nods. Tyan nods, though even that wall is falling apart. Knox watches. He stares at the rotting wood and sighs. One bad wave, and this place gets wiped out. Everyone would die within an hour. This campaign was just a side quest. He had a choice to make: let the town burn or step in and save them. Naturally, he always chose to save it, but why go through all the trouble? Because Chaders eventually becomes one of the richest lands in the empire. This place is a gold mine waiting to happen. Meanwhile, Tigan continues talking to the nobles. He explains that the monsters are multiplying at an unprecedented, terrifying rate this year. It is unlike anything they have ever seen before, but Knox knows the truth. These locals have no idea how this bizarre crisis will actually benefit the land later. They can figure that out in the future. Suddenly, a report comes from the villagers. Someone spotted a griffin. The news freezes everyone, and Gren begins to think. He asks exactly where they saw the beast. Stopping that griffin is absolutely crucial. If they fail to block it, the entire campaign will fall apart completely. Griffins are the literal kings of the wasteland. The game mechanics say you must only avoid them. You do not hunt these beasts, but Knox, he has other plans. He is going to hunt it down. The group looks out over the barren wasteland. Tigan explains it is a neutral buffer zone bordering Tahilan. Knox speaks up. He asks if anyone finds this situation odd. After all, griffins do not live here. Their natural habitats do not even border Chaders. Why would one suddenly appear so close? They usually stay deep inside Tahilan territory. This migration makes absolutely zero sense. A tense, freezing silence falls over the guides. Knox watches their expressions closely. Their nervous faces tell him everything. The traitor has finally revealed themselves, sparking a new quest. This is the official start of the subquest. Now, Knox has to take immediate action. His first goal is to ruthlessly weed out the corruption plaguing this town. Later that day, Schultz furiously crumbles up a fistful of documents. He is livid. Knox is becoming a massive, annoying obstacle to his master plan. Everything is ruined. Thanks to Knox, Schultz completely lost Gren's favor. He grits his teeth, absolutely furious. All that endless sucking up to Gren, completely wasted. Footsteps interrupt his rage. He hears Zitri walking down the wooden stairs of the local inn. He remembers she is just Knox's commoner servant. A wicked plan instantly forms. He corners her, slamming his hand hard against the wall right next to her head. He grabs her arm and yanks her close. Zitri flinches, deeply confused by his actions. She demands to know what he is doing. Schultz sneers. It is obvious they need privacy. He wants to find a private room, but Zitri violently yanks her hand free. She tries to back away, but Schultz steps closer, completely ignoring her boundaries. He claims a night on a stressful mission deserves some amusement. Surely she agrees. He reaches out and grabs her shoulder. The green-haired girl prepares to strike back. She hesitates. Fighting a noble knight right now would only cause massive trouble for Knox. It would ruin Knox's reputation with Gren and expose them to endless scorn. She decided to just let things happen, desperate to protect her master. Schultz sneers that she must pay the price as Knox's servant. But Knox's cold voice cuts through. He is more than willing to pay it himself. A brutal slash rings out. Zitri stares in complete, frozen shock. Knox stands there holding a bloody blade, his freezing gaze locked dead on a terrified Schultz. He tells the man to name his price for those failed efforts. Schultz stammers in confusion, warning that Knox will never get away with this. He maimed Gren's personal knight, after all, but Knox genuinely does not care at all. Another cold flash, and Schultz's other arm falls, unleashing a horrific shriek. Schultz gasps for air, asking if the boy truly thinks his family name will protect him. Knox cuts him off. The only coward hiding here is Schultz himself. The pathetic coward was actually cowering behind Aaliyah and Haber's prestigious names this entire time. Schultz's final sight is Knox's cold blade plunging deep into his back. He drops dead. Instantly, Zitri panics over the absolute chaos this will cause. The consequences of his actions arrive immediately as Gren steps inside, demanding if he killed Schultz. Knox owns up to it without even a single second of hesitation. Gren explodes in pure fury, but Knox calmly asks if they can just talk things out first. Gren grabs Knox by the collar, snarling for a real explanation. Knox does not even flinch, offering a cold, brutally simple reply to his enraged brother. Schultz tried to lay hands on my assistant, and I do not stand by. That specific explanation does not satisfy Gren, but Knox instantly flips the entire script on him. He asks if his brother is truly focused on the right priorities. Watch this, a crushing wave of raw energy erupts from the boy. Gren staggers back in total, absolute disbelief at the truly monstrous strength Knox now wields. He stammers in shock, saying that Knox should have at least reported this situation first. Knox just laughs it off, reminding Gren of his actual reputation. As the infamous family wretch, waiting and reporting are not exactly his strong suits anyway. Instead, he suggests they let their father make the final decision. Gren gulps hard. He reluctantly agrees because he must. Knox flashes a dark, confident grin, turning to tell Zitri that they are leaving right now. They walk out, leaving a stunned Gren to wonder about his brother. How long has Knox been hiding this strength? Why does that sword look familiar? One thing is absolutely certain. Gren can never afford to underestimate this boy ever again. Meanwhile, Knox knows his actions will throw the soldiers into total chaos. They are at a major crossroads now. Who will they follow? Will the soldiers follow Gren or Knox? He turns to Zitri, asking if she is all right. But she turns it around, asking why he would risk so much for her. But protecting her this will only make his entire situation 100 times worse. Knox just smiles, asking if she forgot what kind of master she serves. He is the infamous good-for-nothing of the Leon Haber family, after all. But Knox tells her directly, no matter what, she must never bow her head to anyone. Deeply touched, she nods. Back inside, Gren slams his mug down in pure rage. The troublesome little brother he always looked down on has completely transformed into a different beast. He is a totally different person now, and it is terrifying. Worst of all, that sword Knox held looked exactly like their father's. Gren wanted to watch the boy closely with Schultz gone, but his train of thought quickly snaps. The subordinate from earlier steps in, reporting that the entire mess has finally been cleaned up. He also admits Knox is nothing like the useless noble described in the rumors. But Gren senses something else. He believes this captain is hiding some serious power too. This guy is supposed to head the night order operating in the shadows nearby. Yet Knox somehow knows the layout of this place better than any local. With the monster wave still delayed, Gren decides to exploit this mysterious squad. He orders the captain to hunt down every bandit and monster lurking in the region. And more importantly, he must report Knox's every single move immediately. The subordinate salutes and departs. Meanwhile, Knox is already outside, scheming. He examines some glass vials alongside Zitri, who asks if he inspected the outer walls. He nods. The green-haired girl then asks how they can possibly survive the coming wave. Knox just starts walking, gesturing for her to follow him deeper into the village. He mentions he needs to recruit a massive talent hidden away in this tiny town. Her name is Elena, a legendary potion maker he recruited in every single playthrough. She was his go-to potion factory, a true genius hidden in the mud. Zitri follows him through the filthy alleys, highly skeptical that such a genius exists here. Knox confirms it, explaining that the girl has very specific reasons for hiding out. And that reason is the key to unlocking the secret root of Chatters. In the original timeline, Elena ends up working for another powerhouse, bypassing the Empire entirely. If you do not take this hidden path, you will lose her forever. They push forward, Knox guiding them with complete and absolute confidence. Zitri spots a dim light flickering inside a rundown building ahead. Stepping inside, they find a heavily intoxicated woman glaring back at them. Knox offers a casual greeting, making the startled woman shriek in pure shock. Zitri stares in complete disbelief, unable to accept that this drunkard is their genius. Once she sobered up slightly, Elena apologizes, but Knox cuts right to the chase. Knox reviews her current profile, knowing he absolutely must recruit her right now. Checking her stats, her only negative trait is her massive addiction to alcohol. He sighs deeply. No matter what her flaws are, she is too valuable to ignore. And he knows the high-end mighty Linhaber family would never hire someone like this. Knox insists they have no choice, but Zitri warns that bringing her is too risky. Knox agrees with her concern, but admits the situation is far more complicated. Elena demands to know what they want, so Knox gets straight to the point. Join his squad, and he will give her the one thing she desperately needs. She plays dumb and tries to refuse, but Knox brings up her friend May. Elena freezes in shock. How could this strange noble possibly know that name? He drops a massive bomb. May is scheduled to be executed very soon. But he can save her if Elena agrees to accept his proposal right now. He asks her one last time, is she ready to make a deal? Elena hesitates, her mind racing as she weighs the heavy threat to her friend. May was always the brave one, constantly speaking out against the corrupt local knights. She fought them on the soaring taxes, and she was Elena's only true friend. She openly confronted Tyan and his men for stealing funds meant for the town. But those greedy knights only laughed, ignoring her desperate pleas for justice. He glared down at her before finally dragging May away. Elena wished that it was her who had been dragged off instead, tearing up over her own weakness to save her friend, believing that Knox would never help save the ginger-haired girl either. She doubted she would ever be able to forget this horrible situation, but elsewhere, some clueless thugs are planning their next move. The men Gryan hired were drinking the night away inside a loud tavern. Laughing about what an idiot he was, they were only pretending to be a night order. And Gren had believed their act without any suspicion. Everyone laughed as one of the thugs suggested they should raid the Ron Night Order headquarters to steal a badge that could land them much bigger jobs if they showed it to the Lienhaba family too. They believed they would receive rewards fitting for the actual captain of the Ron Night Order. Things were turning out even better since their leader was also named Ron. He proposed that holding Gren hostage would yield a massive payout. They kept drinking and laughing until another bandit spoke up, wondering if they were making a huge mistake since they were dealing with the most powerful family in the Dark Three. The others glared back, calling him a spineless coward and an idiot. The man shrank back, but Ron quickly calmed the group down. Standing up, Ron asked if they realized where they were. He reminded them this town was abandoned by the Imperial family itself. Ron suggested that they should simply keep holding Gren hostage and take the money before disappearing. He believed that no matter how powerful the Lienhaba family was, they would be completely helpless. In an enemy nation surrounded by desert sand, they kept chatting away. But another bandit pointed out that Knox was also with them. Ron agreed the boy was dangerous and warned everyone to stay away from him for now. Another thug laughed, saying they had nothing to fear from a mere kid, so they kept laughing and drinking, completely oblivious to the shadow creeping closer. Suddenly the candles went out, plunging the room into absolute panic. Ron demanded everyone to quiet down, but suddenly felt warm blood splashing on his face. He looked over to see a decapitated body, hearing the terrified screams echo around him. Confused, he stumbled forward only to find another fresh corpse. Realizing they were under attack, Ron roared for the enemy to show themselves. Knox materialized right behind him. He coldly called them vermin, making Ron leap back in shock. Knox mocked their pathetic hideout, questioning why they dared to rob the Lienhaba family and think they could survive. Ron tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, but Knox cut him off, knowing about their crimes with Tegan and how they planned to use Gren. The leader gritted his teeth, demanding what Knox wanted and begging him to just look away. This single time, meanwhile, the remaining thugs began to surround Knox, throwing out threats, but Knox ignited his sword and spun around to slash through them, asking Ron if anyone was truly naive enough to believe that. Ron screamed for his men to attack, sending them charging at Knox, but he effortlessly dodged their strikes and swiftly cut them down. Ron watched in the background, realizing the kid had been hiding his true power all along. So, the leader grabbed his weapon, channeling his energy, and told Knox to remember. Thinking Ron was dying simply because of his own arrogance, the rest believed Ron would win once he unleashed his southern sword technique, but Knox did not even blink. He easily sliced through the strike, shutting it down with his genius swordsman trait. Shock gripped the crowd. Knox immediately slaughtered the bandits around him. Calling them worthless vermin, he mockingly asked why they dared to question his motives. When he already had everything he wanted right in front of him. He then began to channel the exact same technique Ron just used. After effortlessly countering the incoming strike, the boy drew his blade for real. As he readied the southern sword technique, Knox started reflecting on geniuses. What does that word even mean? He envisioned himself standing inside a vast white void. Dressed in pure white, he kept wondering if being a genius simply meant standing far above normal people. He took a slow step forward, reaching a strange mirror. If a genius is not just someone more exceptional, is it someone who proves they can reach heights others never will? Suddenly, the mirror shattered. Knox realized he had asked himself this same question ever since the moment he first risked his own life. Seriously, what is a genius? With a faint smile, Knox snapped back. He knew this current sword technique was nothing compared to his future skills. Still, it was more than enough to completely wipe out these opponents. Watch this, his swing creates a massive, sweeping wave of pure destruction. Every single bandit gets torn apart by the wide strike. Ron collapses, falling to the ground in total despair. His precious plans were ruined. To make things worse, Chad's highly complex southern sword style took Ron over 10 years to master, yet this kid, Knox, somehow copied it in mere seconds. Knox casually steps right on Ron's blade, staring down with freezing cold eyes. The brown-haired bandit snaps out of his shock and screams. Backing away, he desperately warns Knox that Tigan will make him pay. He screams that Tyan probably already knows exactly what Knox has done. None of these empty threats bother the boy. He calmly reminds him. There are no witnesses left alive. Knox is just doing an assassination. Ron is utterly baffled, so the boy brings a single finger to his lips, silencing him. He whispers that if nobody survives this night, it will go down as a mysterious ambush. Smiling, he prepares to deliver the final blow. He knows exactly what the world will think. With one swift motion, Ron is finished. Meanwhile, deep inside a dark dungeon, May is chained tightly to the brick walls, breathing heavily. Tyan confronts her, demanding answers. He knows she refuses to work or be sold off. Since May remains completely silent, Tyan slaps her across the face to force a confession. She just grins, spitting back that she will never obey him. Angered, he grabs her jaw, growling that she has no power here. He sneers that a lowly trash like her can only crawl and struggle. But instead of crying, she spits right in his face. Tyan freezes. He furiously asks what she thinks she is doing before striking her again. He threatens to sell her to a black mage. May flashes back to her past, remembering her teacher scolding her for failing a basic potion. May tried her absolute best, but she simply was not cut out for this subject. She had pretty much zero talent from the start, not in alchemy, swordsmanship, or anything else. Meanwhile, the teacher was completely thrilled when she finally tested Elena's potion. She felt like there was nothing left to teach the brilliant half-elf girl, showering her with praise. May felt a bitter pang of jealousy, overhearing the teacher sigh. Elena was a war orphan, but because she came from nobility, she had a real shot at escaping the orphanage. Elena was an alchemy genius. She did not belong in this dump. From day one, she was just on a completely different level compared to everyone else. She always had this bright sparkle around her, yet she still wanted to be May's friend. Elena always wanted to play, flashing a smile that made May burn with envy. It is tragic, really. Envy consumed her, but it drove her to make the ultimate sacrifice. She chose to sacrifice herself, certain Elena would accomplish far more than she ever could. She looked at Tigan and spat out that struggling on the dirty ground was her normal anyway. Whatever he decided to do with her corpse after she died was none of her business. May was completely prepared to die. She refused to become a heavy burden to Elena. So she just lay there, letting Tigan beat her mercilessly without fighting back. Suddenly, a sharp voice echoed through the room, telling May to stop hurting herself. Knox told the ginger-haired girl that if she died here, Elena would be absolutely devastated. The young hero stepped forward, blade in hand, as Tigan sneered at his approach. Knox calmly replied that by imperial law, he was here to execute the man. He mentioned that Tigan's partner, Ron, was already dead, so he should just give up. His partner was dead, leaving him with absolutely no backup plan left. Tigan hummed in thought, glancing at Knox and asking if the boy came here alone. Knox did not hesitate for a second, giving a direct, immediate nod. Tigan just grinned, mocking the young noble for severely underestimating him. He sneered, asking if Knox really thought he could win this fight alone. Knox confidently nodded. His absolute certainty only made Tigan frown deeply. He slowly unsheathed his sharp blade, ready to slice this arrogant kid to pieces. Dozens of armored guards suddenly flooded the room, trying to corner him. They blocked the path to the cage as Tigan barked the order to kill him. The light-haired boy watched calmly as the shouting men charged straight at him. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to activate his time-slowing ability. Now watch this, time ground to a near halt, freezing everything in its tracks. It was as if reality itself had frozen solid, and right then, his 5-minute countdown began. 5 minutes, for Knox, that was more than enough time to finish this little chore. He walked right through the frozen crowd, casually slicing down every single enemy in his path. Dragging his bloody sword, he stepped into the cell where Tigan and May were waiting. He strolled past the frozen boss, glancing at his terrified face as the clock kept ticking away. He finally stopped right next to May, gently reaching out to touch her battered face. Keeping the field active, he adjusted his speed to slip back into real time just for her. Pouring a vial on her, he listened as she weakly asked who he was. Knox quietly introduced himself as her vision began to blur and the room started to spin. He told her to close her eyes, promising everything would be over when she woke. She slipped into unconsciousness, and the moment Knox returned to real time, Tigan spun around in shock. Tigan gasped in utter shock, realizing his entire guard squad had already been decimated. Knox had already cleared out his guards and stood waiting inside the cell. When Tigan spun around, he was completely blind to what Knox had done, his balance suddenly failing as he tipped over and crashed hard against the stone floor. Struggling to push himself up, he turned to find his own feet completely severed. Confusion washed over him because he never even saw the strike. Right then, his knights shrieked in pure agony as their blood splattered across the cold dungeon walls. Knox calmly approached the fallen Tigan and told him that his death wouldn't be nearly that quick or easy. Tigan stared back up at him in utter disbelief, a freezing shiver running down his spine. This was completely impossible to accept. How could the great Tigan lose to a mere boy like this? Knox stared down with freezing, empty eyes, wondering once again what a genius really was. He pointed his sword right at the fallen man, pausing as a quiet thought crossed his mind that it was the character Knox who possessed this incredible talent. Raising his blade, the young boy wondered what that talent meant to someone like him. Before plunging the cold steel straight through Tigan, instantly the dying man watched his entire life flash before his eyes. Years ago, when Tigan was still young, his father commanded the legendary Chaytor's mercenary corps. In their small village, that man was seen as an absolute god. Every local warrior wanted to be like him, everyone, but behind closed doors, a much darker reality played out away from public adoration. While the town cheered, Tigan watched his father drag his mother by her hair with blood-stained hands. After a brutal beating, the man would ask, his trembling son if he understood why everyone in town fell in line. The boy kept his head down, whispering that he had no idea. His father gripped his head, the answer, absolute strength. With enough force, you could get away with any crime on this lawless border. On the rugged edges of the Arkham Empire, that was the only law, so the young Tegan asked if his father was the strongest warrior alive on the continent, making the mercenary captain freeze. He slowly let go of his wife and son, quietly admitting his limits. Just another nameless nobody in a massive world of endless conflict. Surrounded by terrifyingly strong master swordsmen across the lands. Genius kids Tegan's own age who possessed unbelievable talent, far stronger than his father. That was the harsh reality of living on a continent torn apart by endless war. That was the tragedy of a war-torn world. Now, facing his end, Tegan realized he only survived this long by actively avoiding those blessed monsters. But now, staring up at Knox, slowly raising the final, fatal sword to end him. He repeated the boy's name in his mind. This kid was definitely one of those terrifying prodigies his father warned him about years ago. Born with a level of talent that normal humans could never hope to touch. Letting out a heavy sigh with pure terror in his eyes, he whispered his final, bitter confession. He was only dying because he made the mistake of challenging a true monster. With one swift thrust, Knox drove the sharp steel deep into Tegan's back, ending his life once and for all. Elsewhere, a worried Elena sat alone, curled tightly in her chair inside the hideout, clutching her knees to her chest. Despair weighed heavily on her as she completely lost hope of ever seeing May return, but a sudden noise nearby immediately snapped her back to reality. Someone called Elena's name. As the half-elf girl turned around, she saw her dearest friend. Stepping into the building with Zitri right beside her, Elena was frozen in absolute shock. Unable to believe May was actually here, she threw herself at the ginger-haired girl. With a desperate, tearful hug, sobbing that she was just so incredibly terrified, she really thought May had abandoned her. May held her tight, apologizing deeply for being so reckless and making her feel that way. She admitted she was the selfish one, foolishly trying to run off and do everything on her own. Watching from the side, Zitri smiled warmly at this emotional reunion. Elena slowly pulled back, wiping her eyes to ask where Knox had gone. The green-haired maid explained that he was currently busy sorting out the remaining mess. And having a talk, Elena looked confused, but Zitri simply mentioned she believed Knox was having a deep, heart-to-heart talk with his older brother, though in reality she knew very well that he had other plans. Meanwhile, as the night dragged on, Gren sat tapping his fingers impatiently against the table, wondering how long Ron would keep a high noble of the Leonhaba family waiting like this. Suddenly, a knock sounded, and Gren frowned only to find his own little brother standing at the door. Knox calmly asked. For just a moment of Gren's time, Gren scoffed, demanding to know why Knox thought they had anything to discuss, but then he froze, noticing the fresh blood on Knox's clothes. Honestly, seeing your quiet brother show up soaked in blood is terrifying, but Knox simply insisted it was a critical matter, so Gren reluctantly gestured for him to come in, telling him to take a seat. Meanwhile, in another room, Rodwell reported to Theodore that they had just received some wild news. Knox had completely cleaned out the corruption in Chatters and was now asking for a very specific reward. Rodwell was completely baffled by the request, so he handed the letter straight to Theodore. The patriarch recalled that Chatters was a barren region no sensible noble wanted to touch, simply because it brought in zero profit. Yet, it was also a massive pain for the Empire, since letting that territory fall meant monsters would flood directly toward the imperial capital. Because of this danger, the crown poured huge amounts of gold, troops, and mercenaries to defend the area. That was precisely why it could never be totally abandoned. Theodore knew Chatters itself held zero real value, and he knew the ruthless bandit groups lurking there were far too dangerous for someone like Gren to handle. One wrong move, and things would turn disastrously violent. Still, Theodore believed that if his sons could not survive a simple crisis like that, they had no right to bear the proud Lianhaba name. That was the sole reason he had assigned the elite Black Sword Knights to accompany them, just to keep them alive. Back to the matter at hand, Theodore knew his youngest son was far too cunning to wipe out a nest of bandits out of pure charity. He wondered why the boy wanted authority over that worthless land. Reading further, the father saw Knox had even offered to forfeit his rights as the youngest son of the Lianhaba family if he could not make the territory profitable. Rodwell asked if Theodore would reject this. Surprisingly, the patriarch decided to accept the offer and secure total control of the territory, believing that this was the perfect chance to test Knox's ability to govern. Let's see if he's a genius. Rodwell bowed in understanding and promised to dispatch a letter to the imperial capital immediately. As the vassal left, Theodore stared at his son's name on the parchment, wondering how far ahead the clever boy was actually planning. The next morning, birds chirped brightly over the peaceful inn as Gren finally learned the harsh truth. Ron and Tegan had planned to murder him, using him as their brainless puppet. Gren felt sick to his stomach, realizing how pathetically he had been used. He despised their underhanded schemes, deeply offended that these lowlifes had dared to leech off him. They even tried tricking the Lianhaba family, yet the man still stared at Knox with deep resentment. Seeing him as a massive nuisance, Knox casually asked if his brother was actually terrified of him. Grine burned with intense rage at the jab, but chose to hold back his explosive temper. He wouldn't become a knight without passing this trial, forcing him to accept Knox's proposal. Sighing deeply, Grine reluctantly asked what the boy wanted, earning a small, amused smirk from Knox. Knox explained that he simply wanted the absolute right to command all of Grine's current forces. Grine realized with bitter dread that his entire life was now resting solely in Knox's hands. He still had absolutely no idea how deep the boy's monstrous power truly ran. In exchange for his troops, Grine demanded a solid guarantee for his survival and victory. Knox agreed but quickly pointed out those were two requests, meaning another trade was necessary. Grine had to offer up even more, causing the older brother to glare in fury. He bitterly agreed to hand over the mineral rights and valuable relics from his massive mine. With that, Grine demanded that Knox handle his end of the bargain perfectly. The young master shrugged, calling it a simple task before standing up with a chilling grin. He casually mentioned he would be in Grine's care while staying in Chader's territory, grinning. He mockingly advised his brother not to do anything reckless, then later headed to Alina's workshop. Knox asked Alina to brew specific potions, and though she had never made them before, she confidently believed it was entirely possible. Still, Zitri was deeply concerned about his plan. Zitri thought Knox's plan was too reckless, questioning why he needed to hunt the griffin. May agreed with the concern, but Knox quickly dismissed their fear as totally unnecessary. He told them not to worry, since he never proposed anything that was actually impossible. Their anxiety was completely reasonable, but Knox had to hide his true intentions from them. He couldn't reveal the legendary item he wanted, choosing to remain mysterious about the details. Zitri reluctantly dropped the subject, but Knox knew slaying the griffin was supposedly impossible. Fighting a high-level griffin at the very start of the game was a suicidal task. Absolutely no ordinary player had ever managed it, but Knox was far from ordinary. He began sketching out a battle strategy, recalling a highly specific exploit from the game. There was a hidden route that made slaying the massive beast completely doable. This advanced trick was only known to hardcore, stagnant water players of the game. Since Knox had cleared this brutal RPG 27 times, he knew every single exploit. He asked if everyone understood, and they all nodded, but why go through all this trouble? He wanted that griffin dead because the hidden drop reward was absolutely game-changing. It was time to execute the plan. By sunset the next day, Knox was feeding his horse. He knew that surviving in this cruel, transmigrated world meant constantly risking his life. That was the harsh reality of this fantasy landscape. Soon, the fateful morning arrived. A massive horde of monsters suddenly stampeded through the dense forest right below them. Knox watched from a high cliff, commandingly telling everyone to prepare for combat. Elena and May readied themselves, while Grind grumbled with a highly irritated look. Turning to the nervous soldiers, Knox warned them they would only get one shot at this. He couldn't help but marvel at how surreal it was to lead them as their sole strategist. Zitri rushed up to his side, her voice filled with deep, unmistakable worry. Just as she had warned him, the dangerous strategy seemed like absolute madness. Knox gently raised a hand, silencing her fears as he calmly met her worried gaze. He told her to trust her master and promised he wouldn't die. With that, Knox leaped. Falling from the wall, his mind flashes back, a promise he couldn't keep. All because of this damn terminal illness. He slows his descent by digging his sword deep into the stone, then launches himself directly toward the approaching monsters. To start the assault, he hurls a corroding potion at an iron golem. It melts the armor instantly. One swift slash is all it takes. Down it goes. System messages flood his vision, confirming the kill. The golem is dead, boosting the proficiency of his overpowered southern sword style. Knox is just warming up. He starts cutting down monsters left and right, thinking that without that crucial promise, he really might have died here. A dark smile spreads across his face as he slaughters the beasts, urging them to become his stepping stones. It is time to enjoy this reality. His grin grows even wider. A colossal griffin is soaring overhead. Knox glares up with determination, ready to challenge the massive flying beast. "Let us get started," he says. Up on the walls, onlookers are in shock. Delena is completely overwhelmed. She cannot believe what she is seeing. A knight with this level of power, it is practically unreal. Is this even humanly possible? May, just as astonished, watches closely. Knox is moving too fast. His movements are impossible to follow. She wonders what kind of place the Reinhart family truly is. Zitri offers some insight. The legendary Reinhart family is known for swordsmanship. It is a place of brutal internal conflicts to decide the true heir. They must prove worthy of the Black Sword, and Zitri is confident. Knox is the most talented candidate of all. Meanwhile, Grain is furious. Feeling a massive wave of jealousy, he gets a major headache from the praise. All this praise for Knox is killing him. Zitri quietly wonders something. Why does Knox never bother to address the terrible rumors about him? She is sure he has his own secret reasons. May speaks up next. She admits those ugly rumors about Knox might be totally false. He must have a compelling reason to play the good for nothing. Even if those reasons remain a mystery, Zitri smiles knowingly. Zitri smiles knowingly and bows, urging the others to play along. After all, Knox is a very wise person beneath the act. Before she can finish, Elena cuts in, offering her own help. She wants to help hide Knox's true nature, reassuring her with a smile. May also promises to keep silent. Zitri is happy to see this bond. But their moment is cut short. The griffin lets out a massive cry. A cold shiver runs straight down everyone's spine. Grain watches in terror. He cannot believe Knox actually intends to fight this terrifying beast. Knox is seriously teetering on the edge of absolute madness right now. The battle begins. The griffin lunges with massive claws, but Knox dodges. Knox swiftly counters, but the griffin is too quick on its feet. It uses powerful wings to soar high, escaping his reach instantly. Knox shoots a freezing glare at Gra, a silent command to act. Though frustrated, Gra knows he must obey. He orders the troops to hold their fire until the beast is right at the walls. The moment was close. They were ready to fire the ballistas on his signal, and Grain made sure. Everyone understood the order. The soldiers responded with a resounding shout, instantly preparing the weapons. Finally, the critical moment arrived. As the griffin swooped low near the fortress walls, Grain gave the signal. With a burst of green light, the heavy ballistas fired. realizing the sudden danger. The beast let out a terrified cry, but it was too late. A massive bolt pierced its wing, sending it screaming in pain as it began a free fall straight toward the ground. Knox watched with a satisfied smile, knowing that neutralizing the griffin's flight was the absolute key to victory. Without a second thought, he downed a metallization potion, boosting his stamina by 1 point, confident in his strategy. Knox smirked as his plan to crush the formidable opponent unfolded perfectly. He remembered a few days ago when Grain, completely overwhelmed with fury, protested the order to build ballistas, considering it far beneath him and demanding someone else do it. But Knox's response had been simple. If Grain found the task so insulting, he could fight the griffin himself on the front lines. After a tense moment, Grain backed down, simply asking how many weapons were needed. Back in the present, Knox approached the fallen griffin. Honestly, you have to admit Grain actually came in handy this time. Knox's cold, analytical gaze locked onto the wounded monster. Now, the final step was to test the power of Alina's potion and end this fight. Overwhelmed by terror, the monster tried to escape, but the burning pain in its crippled wing dragged it back down to the earth. Knox slowly stepped forward, taunting the struggling beast. He casually noted its frustration, pointing out that for high-level monster, a small wound should be nothing, but the ballista bolts piercing its wing were far from ordinary. They were coated in a highly lethal poison, one the griffin had absolutely zero resistance against. Knox darkly warned the beast to brace itself for what was coming, because the true torment would begin in 5 minutes. As the griffin lashed its claws toward him, Knox calmly replied that 5 minutes was all the time he needed. Instantly, his genius time skill activated, and Knox's perception, everything froze. Imagine facing a monster with pressure this heavy. Griffin was suffocating, completely different from the game. Still, Knox knew he was not the one who would be dying today. The griffin, initially confused, was suddenly slashed multiple times from all directions. By the time the bewildered creature realized what was happening, Knox stood calmly behind it, seizing the opening. Knox looked at Grain and shouted his name. Grain, in absolute disbelief, wondered if this was truly the useless Knox he knew. Still, he quickly accepted reality and barked orders at the soldiers to fire the ballistas again. Heavy bolts rained down on the griffin, piercing it from multiple angles while its agonizing screams filled the air. Knox let out a chilling laugh as his sword began to glow with a dark aura, pointing the weapon at the bleeding beast. He wore a cold smile and muttered that it was time to end this. The griffin's painful shriek ripped across the battlefield as more projectiles found their mark. Spectators, both soldiers and citizens, stood frozen in utter shock, witnessing the unbelievable intensity of this legendary clash. Undeterred by the beast's agony, Knox charged, unleashing a final technique known as Black Execution. With one swift strike, the griffin's claw is severed. Suddenly, before the beast can even process what happened, Knox's blade slices right through the mythical beast, splitting it clean in two. The monster collapses, lifeless. Knox calmly sheathes his blade, his job fully done. Victory is secured, but with his genius skill deactivated, the immense strain of the technique leaves him gasping, yet his cold gaze still terrifies the surviving monsters, sending cold shivers straight down their spines. Gripped by terror, they scramble to escape the battlefield. Seeing this desperate retreat, the citizens of Chaders burst into thunderous, joyous cheers. Meanwhile, a system alert notifies Knox of a 60-day life extension for slaying the griffin, pushing his lifespan to 179 days. The grateful crowd weeps happy, emotional tears, watching their joyous celebration. Knox cracks a tiny smile, quietly admitting it feels good to see everyone's so happy. Nearby, Grain stands totally frozen in absolute disbelief. Knox slaughtered that high-tier beast with zero effort. It was a high-level threat. Grain simply cannot believe it, slaying a legendary creature like that.